you tell the community that this thing got created. It's wrong, it's misleading.
He says the government avoids responsibility because sinkholes are natural disasters. Jabuli Limbata, Eyewitness News.
The Nelson Mandela Bay municipality in the Eastern Cape has decided to only purchase waste collection trucks that come with service and maintenance plans following rampant vehicle breakdowns. Last month, 16 refuse trucks that were already out of service due to mechanical problems were stripped of their engines and gearboxes while parked at municipal depots. Many of the vehicles were idle for years, largely because the metro lacks sufficient mechanics to repair them. Alfred Mushwana has more from Gqeberha.
The shortage of refuse collection trucks continues to be one of the most pressing issues in Nelson Mandela Bay, with waste piling up in some communities. The metro has a reasonable number of trucks in its fleet, but most of them have been rendered useless for nearly 5 years due to delayed repairs. Nelson Mandela Bay Mayor Babalwa Lobishe admits the metro can't fix and maintain its fleet on its own.
Each new car must have its own water plan so that we don't have cars that are waiting for our own mechanics forever and they end up being part of crime.
The state of the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality will be subject to President Cyril Ramaphosa's scrutiny over the next 2 days. Ramaphosa and his cabinet are visiting the Eastern Cape to assess the state of the province. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News, Gqeberha.
The Road Accident Fund says it's ready to cooperate with the Special Investigating Unit. This is in relation to a preliminary SIU investigation questioning a property deal involving the RAF's Johannesburg offices. But the fund says the reports are based on a smear campaign led by a former employee who left after allegations of sexual harassment and misconduct. Mcebisi Jonas reports.
Briefing the media yesterday, RAF CEO Collins Letswalo says this individual has posed as a whistleblower, taking untested claims to multiple platforms, including the Public Protector. At the heart of the controversy is the RAF's move to Marble Towers in Johannesburg CBD, a lease arranged through state-owned property managers after years of failed attempts to relocate. The fund insists the move followed all legal and procurement processes.
We are unperturbed because ours was a mission to assist in the sustainability of the RAF.
Letswalo adds that the deal has already been audited by the Auditor General with no irregularities found. While it's critical of the leaking of preliminary findings, the RAF says it remains fully supportive of the SIU's work and will cooperate to see the matter through to finality. Mcebisi Jonas, Eyewitness News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy says any nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran will hinge on verification of Tehran's enrichment and weaponization capabilities. Steve Witkoff, who led the U.S. delegation to talks last week in Oman, has told Fox News that the first meeting was positive, constructive, and compelling. Witkoff appeared to stop short of calling for a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, saying this is going to be much about verification of the enrichment program. Gold is trading at $3,227.41 an ounce. The rand is at 18.83 to the dollar, 24.83 to the pound, 21.34 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $65.06 a barrel.
There's bumper-to-bumper traffic on the N3 North between the Reading interchange and the Geldenhuys turnoff due to an earlier major accident scene. Please be on the lookout there and drive with care while travelling towards Midrand. Delays on the N1 South between the Brakfontein interchange and Olifantsfontein Road.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. An environmental activist in Carltonville says the recurring sinkholes in the area are caused by a lack of infrastructure maintenance.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
What are the matters that matter to you?
702 listens.
702.
Live
On the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7.
And 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Good morning. It's 7 minutes past 9. Thobela, welcome to the Clement Manyathela show. I'm Tshidi Madia, standing in for Clement today. I'll be with you today and tomorrow. Your beloved Madi Major, as I understand he's called, will be back on air on Thursday, just before we break for the Easter. How are you for the Easters? How are you feeling today? I still feel like I'm generally a bright and sparkly person, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a little bit jumpy and anxious about the series of public holidays that are coming because I'm taking a break, and I love the idea of taking advantage of all those days. It's another busy day. It's been a busy week in the news cycle if you're paying attention. Today, I don't know if anyone's paying attention to this story, seen it, but Ace Makgashude, the expelled Secretary General of the ANC, his corruption trial is finally meant to kick off today. I mean, that matter has been with us for a day and then some, right? Think about it. It's followed for so long. That on record CD clip comes from the day he was suspended from the ANC. And that was maybe during COVID, the height of COVID. And only now is the matter going to trial. So we'll see what happens in that case. It's an asbestos matter in the Free State, stemming from his time as premier. But I think the big talking point, the big talk in the country, at least for the past 24 hours, has definitely been the appointment of MTN board chair and former deputy finance minister, Mcebisi Jonas, as the special envoy to the United States. I think it's been largely welcome. I think part and parcel of why this has been largely welcome is that he's seen as somebody capable. There are a lot of people who celebrate who and what Mcebisi Jonas represents, because our relationship with the US is at an all-time low. So I do want to know, what do you think, especially because the comments he made back in 2020 have come back to haunt him. Back in 2020, he called Donald Trump a homophobe, a narcissist, a right-winger. Hey, that was 5 years ago. At the time, it looked like Joe Biden was about to become president of the United States. POTUS 46. He was speaking as a private citizen even. Do you think it matters today? Do you think that Donald Trump will care even about what Mcebisi Jonas said back then? There's a lot of arguments that even those who are now in Donald Trump's cabinet had said a lot of unsavory things about the American president. I'll tell you what I think in just a bit. But also coming up on the show, we'll speak to different political parties about Mcebisi Jonas. That'll be between 10 and 10:30. Between 10:30 and 11, I think it's an interesting conversation. We are seeing more and more reports about inquests into apartheid era killings or deaths. I think families might want to set the record straight, as Bongani was saying earlier on, but we'll look at whether or not, how feasible is this, and the value and the importance, rather, of these inquest and revisiting some of those cases from apartheid era South Africa. Then between 11 and 11:30, it's the world of work. We look at ways to accommodate religious holidays in the workplace. And then between 11:30 and 12, it's the health feature. Our focus today will be on the effects of sugar on children. Our lines are open throughout the show. 011-883-0702. That's if you want to call in and chat to us. 072-702-1702. That's to send a voice note or a WhatsApp.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
So news coming in, I think yesterday, just before the end of this show, President Cyril Ramaphosa's office announcing a new special envoy to the United States. Mcebisi Jonas was that pick. Jonas, never mind who or what you thought he was during his era in the Eastern Cape, because I always watch him and I always think, what an amazing rebrand. Because what we understand now of Mcebisi Jonas is we associate him with state capture whistleblower. He's a former finance deputy minister. We speak about him and his relationship, his time rather at MTN. He's the current MTN board chair. I see a lot of people have welcomed this pick, saying, you know what? The positives is that this is a man that's seen as a businessman, and Donald Trump considers himself to be a savvy businessman, and that it might be easier to reach Trump's people, to have conversations with Trump's people about this, because South Africa has a responsibility, a mammoth task really, to repair relations with the United States at a time where we all kind of reckon that those relations are at an all-time low. But it didn't take long after the announcement from presidency about his speech. If I'm correct, I think I saw it from the SABC show and Bryce Peace, uncovering comments made by by Jonas back in 2020. I want you to take a listen to this conversation. He was speaking at an Ahmed Kathrada lecture. He was giving a speech, from my understanding, at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. It was captured. It is going viral. I've seen even the likes of Joel Pollack, who, as you know, was campaigning really hard to become an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador in South Africa, have picked up on these comments, have started writing about them. So I won't be surprised if more and more of the U.S. commentators and press start speaking about these comments that were made by Mcebisi Jonas. I want you to take a listen to a little snippet of what he had to say.
Right now, the U.S. is undergoing a watershed moment, with Biden the certain winner in the presidential race against the racist, homophobe Donald Trump. How we got to a situation where a narcissistic right-winger took charge of the world's greatest economic and military powerhouse is something that we need to ponder over. It is something that all democracies need to ponder over.
He made those comments in 2020, at the end of 2020, when Donald Trump had failed in becoming POTUS 46. Joe Biden was about to become U.S. president. And it's kind of ironic how he said the world needs to ponder over how somebody like that, a homophobe, a right-winger, becomes a president of the world's most powerful, right, economic and military-wise. And surprise, surprise, Donald Trump finds his way back into the White House. And then today, we have the very same man, Mcebisi Jonas, being appointed as the go-in-between, as a special envoy. And it's important to recognize that this is not an ambassador. We still have to appoint somebody to replace Ibrahim Rasool. I think Bongani Bingo made an interesting point earlier on that the comments that Mcebisi Jonas made are actually far worse than what got Ibrahim Rasool declared persona non grata and kicked out of the US. Remember, Ibrahim Rasool said that Trump was leading, I want to remember, he said Trump had thrown out the basic rules. Yes, that's what he said. That Trump had thrown out the basic rules of engagement. They'd been thrown out the window. He said that Trump was leading a white supremacist movement. He said he violated rules and disregarded conventions and undermined incumbency outside of America. But Mcebisi Jonas' comments goes right to the heart of the person. A narcissist, a right-winger, a homophobe. That's what he called him. Should these comments actually matter? And then there's another question that many have posed about what did our government know? Did they not do their due diligence? And there's a question of whether he should have been vetted. And I've heard a lot of people saying that a person like Mcebisi Jonas is at a point where you don't necessarily vet him. I'm not too sure. I have tried to get some people from presidency to speak to me, but a lot of them have said to me that they're in transit because today the president has a cabinet oversight in the Eastern Cape. So a lot of people saying that they're unable to come on and speak to me about what is their position on this, and to also answer some of these questions. I do take it that some of you have raised that some who are in Trump's cabinet, right, have also insulted the now U.S. president. I want you to think about Marco Rubio, who says a lot of unsavory things about South Africa. Terrible things are happening. He refused to come, of course, if you remember, to that first G20 foreign ministers meeting back in February. But I want you to hear what the Marco Rubio thought of Trump before becoming his Secretary of State. Take a listen.
Let me tell you something. I will never quit. I will never stop until we keep a con man from taking over the party of Reagan and the conservative movement. He's a con man. He's a con man. He's a con man. I'll tell you why. Number one, people are angry and frustrated and scared about the future. Okay? People are working in their lives and they're running in place. And he swoops in and is taking advantage of that. He's taking advantage of that. He's telling people, I'm going to fight for the little guy. I'm fighting for the working class. Here's what he doesn't tell them. He has spent a career in business, 50 years, sticking it to the little guy. Sticking it to the little guy. When his companies went bankrupt, the first people that didn't get paid were the subcontractors, the plumbers and the pipe fitters and the people that laid bricks and all those people that worked for a living. They didn't get paid. He got his money. They didn't get theirs.
A con man. Now, Marco Rubio today, no, is the Secretary of State on behalf of the man he declared as a con man. There's also weird thinking, on my part at least, that South Africans who believe that Trump must accept, or the Americans must engage Mcebisi Jonas on a basis of he was a private citizen and that those who serve the US president now have said worse things. But the rules will not be the same. The rules of engagement to little old South Africa, because you're not an exception, will certainly not be the same. I'm taking your calls on 011 883 0702 072 702 1702. That's for voice notes and WhatsApps. Glenn in Bedford View, good morning to you.
Morning. I hope everybody's keeping well.
Yes, we are. What's on your mind?
Good. Right. I think that we mustn't mistake the fact that you could probably call Donald Trump whatever you want. That's not really where his ego is sitting right now. I think that the fight between South Africa and the United States has everything to do with what's going on in the Middle East and the ICJ. I think that we need to appreciate the fact that we've stoked a hornet's nest in that area and our friends in terms of affiliation towards the Middle East and which side we lie on, and in terms of a government stance and some of the relationships that are there. And I think that that's the biggest threat, and that the rest of this is being used as a pressure point. I think if South Africa wanted to get to the negotiation table, and I'm not saying that they should do this. I mean, the government, you guys in politics are far smarter than I am on this issue, but if they were to drop that ICJ, in my opinion, they could probably negotiate a 10-year investment by the U.S. government into South Africa. That's how sensitive that matter is to the American people, and I think that's a big thing. If you look at what they're doing with ICE in terms of all the students, anybody who stands up and talks about pro-Palestine, they want to get this is not economic, it's not ego. This is all about what's going on in the Middle East, and I think we need to be smarter to realize that our friends are not the American friends, and we're going to be under pressure indefinitely until somewhere along the line we make a decision, accept the pressure and stay our course. Alternatively, we need to put the South African economy first and say we're going to look after us first rather than looking after everybody else's interest and focus on there. And I think that would change the mind, and again, rightfully or wrongfully, that's my opinion of why we're under the pressure that's there.
That's a fair point. I do think ICJ is a huge part of it, Glenn. But help me understand, you're thinking about backtracking, really. What will it make us look like to the rest of the globe? Do we worry about that? Or are the economic considerations so immense that backtracking and possibly compromising ourselves with our other partners, because we don't just do business, we don't just relate to the US, we have relations with many other nations. What will that make us look like to other nations? How difficult or how easy will it make our trade relations and other relations with other states?
Well, again, that's why I want to reiterate that this is not the area that I'm the smartest in to be able to sort out global politics. I think anybody who has those answers would be running the world, never mind the country. But I think that we need to make sure that we're not naive, and I think that this is where this is what we try and do is we try and fight on the principle of whether Donald Trump's a businessman. Anybody in business knows that you'll get called whatever you want by a million different people who have different opinions, and until the deal is there, it's water off a duck's back to a large degree. So I don't think that it's got to do with, I don't think that Jonas's previous statements would have there. If Jonas came out and said something along the lines of around that, there's a lot of sensitivity around the Palestine-Israel issue and everything. Should we choose sides? Again, it's not. I don't know. I'm not. There's too much at it. Sure. I'm not privy enough into that. But I do think that we've got to start looking at what's going to be best for the South African people. We've got to feed our people, and it's great to be able to stand up for principles and everything else. But principles often don't put food on the table for the hungriest of the hungry.
All right.
And we need to also take that into consideration.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Glenn out in Bedford. And he's raising a point that many people make is South Africa and its value systems and its Ubuntu and its stance on Palestine there are people who've made that argument that maybe that needs to take a back seat and think about your own issues in the country where the economy is not growing, where people are languishing in poverty. And that is a question that many people raise time and again. And so the government needs to think about that. What's interesting for me is that when he raises the issue of people in the US, I spent time in Nevada as well as in Ohio. And you know what? Palestine is an issue for ordinary citizens. They don't agree with their government's posture. They don't agree with the support. They are quite vocal about what they think is wrong as far as Palestine is concerned. Sammy in Centurion, hi to you.
Hello, Tshidi. Tshidi, I really think our leaders need to stop this revolutionary mentality. These guys, they should have done a background check. It's either they knew about what I said about Donald Trump, or they didn't. And if they didn't, it says a whole lot about them. And we just need to face the facts, Tshidi. Africa, we need America more than they need us. That is just a fact. So this whole thing of being hard-headed and saying, no, what about Marco Rubio had said? What about what this other had said about Donald Trump? Those people are Americans and they're Republicans. And it's CD. In as much as people don't want to admit this, those people are white. Mcebisi Jonas is black. Race plays a whole lot in this matter. Imagine if a white person had said something about Ramaphosa or about South Africa, and he was being sent to our country. What are we going to speak?
South Africans are up in arms over comments made by AfriForum about ANC leaders, and a lot of people aren't big fans of the ANC and some of its leaders, but will take a stance. So, let me ask you this. Who then, if not Mcebisi Jonas, who would you have been satisfied with? And I think it's important to recognize that an envoy is not an ambassador. I think there's a bit of confusion, but I'll explain that in just a bit. Who, Sammy, would have satisfied you as a pick to help ease relations, to communicate, to be the messenger? Because that's what an envoy is.
Someone, that lady, who's that lady? She used to be, I think, the leader of Business Unity South Africa.
Busi Mavuso.
Yes, she's so that I think she's level-headed. She's cool-headed. She doesn't have this thing of revolutionary mentality, whatever. She's about business. I think they should have sent her. Not Mcebisi Jonas knew exactly what she had said about Donald Trump. No.
But Busi Mavuso has made some very strong and sometimes I think accurate comments about the ANC. And I think that's also the other issue, that this is an intersection between the politics, what governance requires, party space, people's reputation, egos, because she's made some very strong comments in the past about the ANC's leadership and how it's handled its role in governance. I imagine that she would not have been a pick. From my understanding, thank you so much. Sorry, I'll give you a chance. You can quickly have a say, Sammy.
No, but I remember what she had said about ANC, but she was telling the truth, was she not? Yes,
Fair point. That's Sammy out in Centurion. Thank you so much, Sammy. There's also an argument that Mcebisi Jonas wasn't necessarily the president's first pick. I've asked people in the hallowed halls of the Union Building that how did you not know about these comments? Were you taken aback? Why would you not do your due diligence? And the responses have been quite interesting. Some of the responses have been, but J.D. Vance has said worse things. Of course, J.D. Vance, as you know, is the vice president of the U.S. I'd want you to listen very quickly to what J.D. Vance had to say. And then I'll just come back and tell you a little bit more of what I heard as some of the discussions around Mcebisi Jonas in the Union Buildings and why they were intent on going in this direction.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history. It's that Trump is a really bad candidate and, frankly, I think a really bad person.
Frankly, a really bad person. They kiki, they giggle. He's vice president. And the rules, as I keep saying, are not the same for them versus us. They're not the same. Just like an envoy is not the same as an ambassador who lives in a host country. An envoy, from my understanding, is Mutomo Roma, Ngwaya, and they come back. Luntu and Davidson, you also have a view on the special envoy. Good morning, Luntu.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. Go on.
Right, my view is quite simple, is that we could find the best of angels to send to America. It doesn't really matter, because the fact of the matter is that they know exactly what they are doing, because you can't say to me, you have now found a statement made by Mcebisi that was made 5 or 6 years ago in some innocuous meeting, but you don't know that there's no white genocide. So you do know that there's no white genocide. In fact, you know exactly what you are doing. So it's irrelevant. We can see South Africans discuss who do we send. It doesn't really matter, because you can't tell me America, with all of its intelligence, does not know that there are no bad things happening here. They know that there's no such a thing that is being peddled by the AfriForum and these other orgs. So they do know that it's not happening, but they continue saying it's happening. So it means that it's counterintuitive to anyone to suggest that there's anything that we as South Africans can do other than to drop the ICJ matter, which is basically the issue at hand. Anything else is just a smokescreen, and you're going to waste our time trying to act that you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's really a waste of time.
We know what they want,
matter
that's
is,
what you're saying.
Yeah, as the first caller has said, that is the matter. So we can spend the next hour discussing that, whether we're dropping ICJ or we don't, because the rest of the other stuff is just a smokescreen and a waste of our time.
All right. Thank you. That's Lunto out in Davidson. I have very strong views around the issue of dropping an ICJ matter and what that makes us look like on the global stage. I don't think you can do that. But the questions that are being asked about the impact, the consequences, and whether you buckle down and take the pressure that comes with it. And we are seeing what that pressure looks like. It's a heavy toll that we are paying for that decision. And I don't think that there are enough nations that are willing to stand by our side. I know South Africa has gone back and forth around some of the enforcement orders, and I'm not sure if they'll go. I think they've gone 4 times maybe. I'm not sure if they'll continue. I don't know if they've lost their appetite, whether they recognize that now's the time to try and play it cool and to be a little bit quiet. I'm going to play some of your voice notes on this matter. Just take a listen.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone. I just wanted to actually just weigh in on this appointment of Mcebisi Jonas as a special envoy to the United States. And I think for me, the one concern is the fact that obviously he made those particular remarks in as far as the US president is concerned. So I'm not sure if the president really thought this out, that this could be the person that could mend that, given what his impressions of Donald Trump are. And secondly, he's the current chair of MTN. And I think the one thing that for me concerns me is that MTN does business with Iran. Isn't Iran also a bit hostile to the United States, and want that as well counting against him in trying to mend those particular relations? And this is Stephen here from Randburg.
Stephen, I love you because you raised a point that I've been flagging since yesterday. MTN's involvement with Iran. America and Iran have an acrimonious relationship that stems as far back as the 70s, 80s, from my understanding. No matter the administration, and I said it to Bongani earlier, no matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they will always have an issue with Iran. So our leadership in picking the chair of the board of MTN, when that's an issue, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to be welcomed with open arms, even by Congress, where some of the issues that are put on the table are attempts to review even the bilateral relationship. What is our government thinking is going to happen? I find that really difficult. And even that MTN matter, I recognize that it's been gone from pillar to post in Iran, in South Africa, in the United States as well. We'll speak to Khaya Sithole just to get his own perspective as well on this issue, even though nothing really has been found wanting, because there's also levels and claims of that the Iranian deal was supposedly secured through bribes. That matter hasn't been proven to be true. But can you imagine what the Americans will do with it? Yeah? So why pick a person with even more controversies, more clouds? Now you're not dealing with the issue you're trying to resolve. Now you must deal with the credibility of the character that you've appointed. What thought process, huh? I'm so confused. Sfiso has your headlines before I get beat up.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning. The High Court in the Western Cape is expected to rule on the admissibility of 2 confessions in the Jocelyn Smith trial. For the last 2 weeks, the court has heard a trial within a trial to determine whether the confession statements made by Jacqueline Apollos, who is one of the accused in the matter, can be used as evidence by the state. Apollos is on trial alongside Stefano van Rijn and Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, for the child's disappearance more than a year ago. The Nelson Mandela Bay municipality in the Eastern Cape has decided to only purchase waste collection trucks that come from service and maintenance plans following rampant vehicle breakdowns. Last month, 16 refuse trucks that were already out of service due to mechanical problems were stripped of their engines and gearboxes while parked at municipal depots. And U.S. immigration authorities have arrested another university student who participated in pro-Palestinian campus protests. Mohsin Madawi was handcuffed while attending an interview to become an American citizen. His lawyers claim President Donald Trump's mounting crackdown on immigration student protesters violates the U.S. Constitution. And those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage, if you are coming from Germiston, this is heading towards the Joburg CBD. You can expect heavy delays. This is through Alberton on the N3 southbound between the Ilands interchange and the Geldenhuys interchange. This is due to an earlier accident. Also heading into the Joburg CBD, still coming from the George Koch area. There's bumper-to-bumper traffic on the M2 westbound between Joslovo Drive and the Crown Interchange due to an earlier accident. As a result, coming from Boysons heading into Sandton, there's also slow-moving traffic M1 northbound between Boysons Road and Empire Road. We still have that slight delays. That's in the Nooitgesig area. We had reports of protests in the area that's leaving Orlando heading towards Joburg, Nooitgesig area. So avoid that route if you can. There's also slow-moving traffic still in Soweto on Chris Hani Road approaching the N1. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Africa Milani.
Weekday mornings,
4 to 6.
I imagine we'll quote the current inflation rate, which is sitting at about 3.2, 3.6%. The Reserve Bank forecasting a 4.5% for 2026. And so we'll make an argument against a 10% increase in the wages across the board as you're demanding.
In fact, both the RMI and the FRA, in response to our demand, they've offered an inflation-based increase of 3%. The RMI wants a 5-year agreement. FRA is proposing a 3-year agreement.
Africa Milani.
4 to 6 on 702.
Ah, Shane, do you have a sore throat? The Andalex range of lozenges offers 2 options. At the first signs of an irritated, scratchy throat, use Andalex lozenges for dual action, soothing relief. But for a painful, inflamed throat, use Andalex C lozenges for triple action, pain relief. Andalex, SA's #1 choice for a sore mouth and throat. Andalex lozenges are available at all leading pharmacies and supermarkets.
Just Andalex it.
Make soccer season legendary with Hollywood Bets. Aziz Shagay, Let's Play takes your disky passion to the next dimension. Light up the games with your best bet slip and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand in prizes, including a brand new Toyota Fortuner. Bet a minimum of 10 rand on any soccer fixture to qualify. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bets supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp HELP to 076 675 0710.
Managing your workforce shouldn't be complicated. That's why businesses choose Onacy, a proudly South African cloud-based payroll and HR solution. From payroll and e-recruitment to performance management and self-service tools, we streamline the way businesses handle their people. Scalable, secure, and always online, our system evolves with your needs because your workforce deserves the best. Switch to Onacy and experience payroll and HR done right. Visit onacy.com today.
The Money Show.
Weekday evenings at 6.
Mcebisi Jonas now, our special envoy. Do you think this approach is going to work?
Well, you have to try. You know, there's nothing that beats dialogue. Notwithstanding what Mr. Donald Trump has said, he's left the door open to say all the countries that are affected by this, they must come and negotiate. At least there's an opportunity.
Alan Makoki, CEO at the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
The Money Show
on 702. 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show on 702 with Stephen Grootes is proudly brought to you by ABSA CIB. Honored by the 2025 Salter Awards. Your story matters. ABSA is a registered FSP.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
9:36 Tshidi Madia in for Clement Manyathela. We are absolutely discussing Donald Trump today. Yet again, he tends to dominate, doesn't he? news of the world, news in our country. Of course, it's on the back of news that President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed former Deputy Finance Minister, businessman as well, Mcebisi Jonas, as the first special envoy to the US. Remember at the State of the Nation address in February when the president said, "We will not be bullied." He then said he'll send a series of special envoys to the US and the continent to explain South Africa's position as far as its foreign policy is concerned. Part and parcel of that was the issue of the disinformation that was happening at the time, that continues to happen. And I think one of the callers said earlier that it's not like the US is incapable of finding out what's actually happening in this country. They're doing it deliberately. And at some point today, in a bit, I'll raise the issue of the countries that are willing to cut a deal, because what they're looking for are deals. Trump has made that very clear, that the pause on the reciprocal tariffs is in part because he wants deals. At the time, he had said over 75 countries. You know who else was trying to cut a deal? Lesotho. Are you paying attention to what Lesotho's doing? So we'll talk about that. But I do want your thoughts on Mcebisi Jonas. And what did they know? What did they not know? The comments that he made at the Kathrada lecture, the comments that he made at the Kathrada Foundation, the late Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the comments that he made calling Trump a homophobe, a right-winger, a narcissist. Will those come back to bite him? But again, he's chair of MTN. MTN does business in Iran. So I was trying to understand all of those intersections and what these could mean. But most importantly, how we ought to look at this particular appointment. So I spoke to Khaya Sithole, social commentator, to get his thoughts. Khaya often puts the pieces together, 1 + 1, financially, of what makes sense or what doesn't make sense. Take a listen. So we speak now to Khaya Sithole. Good morning, Khaya. Welcome to Radio 702. Let's speak about this pick. Mcebisi Jonas is a businessman. Donald Trump seemingly likes those. Is this a good pick of the messenger, the envoy, in your opinion, for South Africa?
I think in the context of where we are and clearly how open to engaging with people who have a business profile that Donald Trump is, this is as good as pick as we can get in this particular context. And I think obviously what we also need to be aware of is that the scope of the envoy's job tends to be limited by design, but also deeper in the sense that he will obviously identify what the key points of deliberation need to be in order to really find a pathway into the White House and those that are close to the president in the White House, and then focus on those. An ambassador, on the other hand, would have obviously adopted the more general scope of what an ambassadorial role is, and we're obviously still expecting South Africa to appoint one, but I think the envoy will be able to focus on the more contentious issues and have a much deeper focus there in the interim while we're waiting for the normalization of all other diplomatic relationships.
People have raised, Sharon Bryce Peace pointed out that this particular pick has made unsavory comments. Let's call them unsavory comments. But I think, depending on who you ask, very honest assessment, really, of Donald Trump, which Donald Trump is likely to not take to. But I took issue with the intersection between Mcebisi Jonas, who's chair of MTN, and the intersection with Iran. And I thought I felt it was quite curious that the president would pick somebody with a matter that's still pending, and a matter, from my understanding, that's shrouded in allegations of bribery and corruption. And again, it's Iran. America is not a fan of Iran.
Yeah. So I think in relation to the first aspect relating to the comments that he made ahead of the 2020 U.S. presidential election, I think in that context he was obviously a private citizen, and it would be very difficult to find an honest commentator, an honest political commentator who hasn't had some interesting things to say about Donald Trump since 2016. I think anyone who observes politics and is honest in their engagement would have highlighted a lot of issues in relation to Donald Trump's conduct and to Donald Trump's campaigning over the past few years. So I don't think we're going to find many people out there who haven't had something to say about Donald Trump, including members of his now cabinet. It's clearly been a very polarizing political history since Donald Trump decided that he was going to run of frontline politics and indeed succeeded twice. So I think Mcebisi Jonas is just like any other commentator out there who has had personal views in his capacity as a private individual. But obviously, at this particular point in time, you imagine that some American commentators and some American observers will definitely pick that up, and whether they want to weaponize it against them is something that we cannot control. It's something that we just have to observe. On the question of the Iran and MTN issue, it is indeed a pending matter. But I think what is quite interesting about it is that it's a matter that's been going on for over 20 years now, ever since MTN obviously won the right to operate in Iran in around 2005. And clearly, what has become the issue is that this matter has been prosecuted not only in Iran, also in the United States, also in South Africa, and at every turn, MTN has come out on top. And I think at the core of it is the realization that those that are alleging that wrongdoing was done by MTN are struggling to find a court that will entertain the jurisdiction. So you'd imagine that, well, if it all happened in Iran, then Iran should be dealing with it. But the Iranian authorities have said, well, they actually take no interest in the matter. They do not think that anything wrong was done. MTN has conducted its own independent investigation, and they also said that nothing was done. So it does look, unfortunately, that 20 years later, at some point in time, we have to question whether this case would ever go anywhere. And I think in the United States, we do know that it is now an administration where snippets are used and weaponized against individuals that are not palatable. So I don't think it is inconceivable that at some point in time, somebody will try to elevate that to be a point of deliberation or a point of contesting Mcebisi's appointment. But I think at this stage, it is a matter that predated him. It is a matter that he has actively tackled in his capacity as the chair of the board. And it is a matter that MTN has not shied away from. So whenever they've been called to account in any court, whether it's in Iran or the United States or even South Africa, they've been there and they've said, look, these accusations are baseless, and it remains so until a particular court firstly identifies the jurisdiction, which is where the case is still stuck 20 years later, and then it tries the basis of the allegations against known facts.
That's a very interesting one because, I think one would imagine if Trump applied common sense or if the rules mattered, it wouldn't be. But if that was the case, then the disinformation campaign is on against South Africa would not be part of the conversation. Are there any considerations that you have around the timing? South Africa had kind of wanted to be quiet and observe for a little while. I think a week ago, in the middle of this tariff war, they had taken a posture to kind of pause. And they will take their time, it's clear, on picking somebody who will replace Ibrahim Rasool. Any thoughts around the timing of when this envoy is being announced and being picked?
Yeah, I think it's quite important that the appointment is happening now because you can imagine that within the scope of issues that need to be addressed, the question of the economic relationships is a very important one. And when you look at what the tariff war has done, it has forced some countries to then redeliberate on what type of trade relationship they want to have with the United States. So it's actually a priority number one issue. And what you want to be able to do is that if the president already had a particular preliminary list of envoys that he wanted to dispatch there, the one who was going to be tasked with the economic relations was clearly the priority one, and therefore that's why this appointment has been accelerated ahead of the others. And we're obviously expecting more to be announced because, again, there are so many moving parts to this relationship. We want to make sure that they're all tackled at the appropriate level. So I do think that it was indeed rushed by the fact that there is an escalation of a war and clearly there will be casualties. It's now a matter of just managing those casualties on behalf of South African citizens.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Khaya.
All right.
So that was a conversation I had with social commentator Khaya Sithole, speaking about that MTN issue, and interestingly enough, saying that this is a safe pick as far as Mcebisi Jonas is concerned, that an envoy, and I think it's an important thing to recognize, and it's an important distinction to make for people, that an ambassador and an envoy are not the same, right? In essence, yes, they both ultimately account to the president, but an envoy, in essence, in its truest sense, an envoy is a messenger. An ambassador is definitely more high-ranking. They also present credentials. Remember, we are waiting for the US's ambassador to arrive here. Some angry South Africans believe that those credentials should be rejected, but they serve in a longer duration in their capacity as a diplomat. They also stay in their host country. The envoy is meant to hold a series of meetings. It's a short temporary assignment. They're going to deal with particular issues. Khaya saying Mcebisi Jonas, in this case, will be able to deal with contentious issues quite quickly. You know, as I said, the other also lives in the host country while the other one moves between their base, which is their country, and where they are assigned from time to time. I don't know if Mcebisi Jonas will be welcome, and also what he'll find. Because remember, Ibrahim Rasool, when he was booted out, declared persona non grata, said that part of the difficulty is that the State Department is not fully set up, that there is no Africa office or Africa secretary. So you also don't know which door you're actually going to knock at to be heard. Is it a matter of going to Congress? I don't know. There's some who are putting in a review of the bilaterals even, never mind AGOA. Just the relationship itself has now become a problem for some in Congress. So it's a very difficult place that he'd need to navigate. I want to go to your WhatsApps and voice notes now. 0727021702. If you want to chat to us, 011 883 0702.
Hi, Tshidi. You know, Mcebisi Jonas, by going to the US, you know, Donald Trump is going to toy with him. I'm telling you. My advice to him is that why don't they get someone, not this man, because Donald Trump is going to tear him apart. I'm telling you. So if I were him, I'll just stay at home. Finish and clear. Taru from Deep Roof.
Hi, it's CDN 702. With regards to Mr. Jonas being appointed, I think it again shows the incompetence of the ANC, because they just don't read the room properly. You cannot send someone to meet Donald Trump who has said things about him. He's just not that kind of a person who's going to forgive you. It's almost like going to a job interview. You kind of got to tell them what they want to hear because you at their mercy, if you like. It's just poor management by the ANC. And just one other thing, you spoke of Mr. Jonas being a businessman. He's not a businessman. There's absolutely nobody in the ANC who are successful businessmen. They are just people with positions and power who have been given positions in companies because they can influence things and get things done for you. They are not businessmen. They have never created a business. There is no one successful business being run by an ANC-backed businessman which is not part of corruption. If they don't have corruption in them, they're not successful. Thank you. It's Sanjay. Bye.
Yo, MJ. But you sound like Bongani Pingwa, who said, what businessman are you all referring to? What businessman? And that's the other thing. To me, part of what this is for Mcebisi Jonas is his bid at becoming number one. Do you remember he had a book after the New Dawn, After the Dawn, What Will Happen, where he tried to kind of set out a scenario of what will happen next. So I think wanting to serve the nation as well speaks to an ambition I think he deep down kind of sort of has to become number one. But I take that very strong criticism. I wanted to speak about Lesotho, or get your thoughts at least, because I think Lesotho is attempting to scramble it. It's scrambling at least, trying to cut a deal. Remember, Trump also, as much as he says horrible things about us, had very little to say said nothing good rather, about Lesotho, saying that the US has spent around $8 million to promote LGBTQI plus in a country, as he said, not my words, says, that nobody ever heard of. Then he slapped them with a 50% tariff on all imports from Lesotho. So from my understanding, and I remember, I don't know if you saw that story where it was alleged that officials from Lesotho were scrambling. High-ranking Lesotho officials were trying to cut the deal. This is when he had that pause. And part of that memo that was sent out, I think last week, from the U.S. Embassy in Maseru, said that government's effort to stay on the good side of American president would try, just to make sure that they don't come into his crosshairs. But part of this was pledging to buy more goods from the U.S. The officials apparently also tried to say that they would also take in what they've seen, supposedly, as so-called undesirable immigrants, take them to Lesotho. And I think that's an issue. Obviously, Lesotho is a landlocked country. It is here. So I don't know if anybody's watching what's happening around Lesotho. There's also, it will also grant Elon Musk Starlink an operating license. So it seems that Lesotho is doing everything it can to not be where South Africa is. I don't think people want to be treated the way South Africa is treated. I want to take a quick break and come back to more of your voice notes.
Dear Journal, day 4,548 of trying to be an adult. I used to believe that I have 206 bones in my body. Now, I can hear that I have 206 bones in my body.
Aggressively realizing your age. and get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's simple and like 19 Rand a day, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, a licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
Make Easter extra with Checkers. Fry SA's favorites. Enjoy hot cross everything and discover over 1,000 treats for your hunt. Plus, save on Coca-Cola, Fanta, Sprite, Stoney, Sparletta or Twist soft drinks. Any 300ml 6-pack for $59.99. President cream cheese, 230 grams for $49.99. And Bacoma Wheat Bix, 900 grams or cornflake cereal, 1 kg. Any 2 for 99 Rand. Valid until 21 April at Checkers, Checkers Hyper or shop on 6060.
We think it's time you pose with your Mahindra and take a snap for Insta. Or go jol with your crew in your new Isuzu. Why not complete your makeover with a brand new Land Rover? Or see what you've been missing not driving a Nissan. Whichever car starts your party, you're bound to find it at Bidvest McCarthy. We have all these brands and so much more. You're guaranteed to find what you're looking for. Bidvest McCarthy. Our people deliver. Always.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
9:52, taking your calls. We are discussing the appointment of Mcebisi Jonas as the special envoy to the US. Stephen there earlier saying, not Stephen, I think it was MJ, earlier saying that what businessmen come from the NC? You hostile. Stephen and Centurion, good morning to you.
Yes, ma'am. I just feel sorry for Mcebisi Jonas. He's a very good guy, but he's coming from a polarized country, and his calling is going to deal with somebody who really is unpredictable. It's not for him. From where he comes from here in South Africa, we are much divided. The guy just called now. You can hear behind what he's saying. He's saying, this is black person. You will never make it. There's nothing good that can come from a black man. That's what he's saying. He just hides behind ANC. There's no one from ANC that can be a businessman. But it's just
that is not true. We know that that's not true.
Yeah, that's what he said. It's just coming from the racial mentality. He just wants. He didn't just want to come clear to say he's a black. He said no, he's coming from the ANC. There's no black ANC president. It's just polarized, coming from a polarized country, and they mustn't go there try to please the Donald Trump. They must just present their case, and then because it's not about whether the South Africa or what, it's about Israel. That's all.
Stephen.
And the race, these people now in South Africa, most of them are very angry, especially those racist people. They're very. I'm not saying white are racist, but they are racist people.
No, you can't ignore that they are
angry. They're angry because it just happened not to be white. You hear your caller, last caller.
Stephen, there are... Hold on. Yes. Stephen, we can't deny that there are racial dynamics. That's part and parcel, unfortunately. Let me finish. That's part and parcel of the South African story, unfortunately. But you also can't necessarily blame somebody who questions the credibility of people linked to the ANC. That's also the ANC's own doing. Hold on, let me finish. I'm going to give you a chance. You also can't blame people who question the ANC and the credibility of people linked to the ANC. The ANC's got a lot of good people. I think it's very important to flag that. But the ANC's also got a reputation that it helped to create that makes people question its credibility. I mean, Bongani Pingwa is a black man. Is one of us, and he said, what business? And part of the reason why you would have said that is because Mcebisi Jonas was Deputy Finance Minister. Then he went to work, I think, for Magda's Insignia before ending up at MTN. So for people, they will question someone like that. And I don't think that we have to take issue with it, but I recognize the other issue that you are flagging around race. That's part and parcel of the unfortunate story of the South African tale, because our history is very much alive with us to date. But I take what you're saying.
No, I understand you, man. But I don't think there's really a person that we can say this one will go and deal with Donald Trump. Because if you go from that angle of being saying, you will never get to Donald Trump. It's not about that. The issue, I think, is just angry about the issue.
Oh, sorry. I think I kind of sorry. Yes.
Yes, thanks, man. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. That's Stephen Arton Centurion. Vusi in Germiston. Hi.
Hi, Tshidi. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. You also have a proposal of who could be a good person to send as an envoy to the US?
I think Ruel Khoza fits the requirement of the person who can deal in a matter like this.
Actually, yes.
We are talking about a prolific leader and writer and businessman with a serious track record.
I take that. Thank you. That's actually a great suggestion. I've met Ruel Khoza. He's a bit older. I mean, he's in his 70s, if I remember, but he still drives himself around. He's got quite a lot of energy. And you're right, actually, in terms of being an astute business mind, and also who cares and wants to serve the country and is a patriot. Because what you also require at a moment like this is somebody who wants the best for the country. Where we want to move the country has to not be lost on whoever you send. Thank you so much. That's Vusi out in Germiston there for that comment. I want to come back to more of your voice notes.
Hello, morning, Tshidi. I think we ascribe a lot to Donald Trump. I don't think he considers himself a businessman, like you say. But what does his track record say? What does history say about it? He's failed numerous times. He has liquidated companies. He has been found to have lied about his portfolio, about his net worth. So I don't think is that shrewd as we consider him. I think we give a lot of credit to Donald Trump more than he actually deserves. Mcebisi Jonas is fit. He's diplomatically savvy. He's capable. He's shrewd. He's fit for that position. I think Donald Trump is just another guy who happens to cross serendipity in becoming U.S. president. Prince, that review.
Thank you so much for that, Prince. That the issue at the heart of this is the man leading the United States, and what we require as a nation from the US in order for our nation to thrive. This is a significant trade partner. They have a say. They are important. No matter what our personal views are about the man at the helm, he was elected via democratic process. That's also something we have to contend with. It's 9:58. Let's take a break. Thank you for your input.
At 7:02,
we're proud of a lot of things,
but none more than our connection to you.
because we know when we walk the talk,
We're never alone.
I had been waiting so long for UIF for 18 months, and Kabazela and John Perlman had somebody from UIF on. And you know what? I finally got paid, and I just want to say it's actually saved my life. So 702, thank you, and you reach far and wide to all people.
Every SMS,
voice note,
email,
phone call,
your every word leads to action.
that changes lives, changes minds, uplifts communities, and holds authority to account.
Together, we've turned dialogue into good deeds.
And promises into progress.
Yes, we did that. You and 702. So, stay tuned.
Because if this is how far we've come, imagine how much further we can go.
When we stick together. 702.
Let's walk the talk.
When you're out there hustling, juggling the calls and meetings, making the next buck, doing the next job, growing your business with blood, sweat, and tears, you need tech solutions that will help you get things done. And that's why you should visit mtnbusiness.co.za or go to an MTN store near you, because you'll find the tech solutions you need to level up your business and make your life easier, so you can get back to doing what you do best, the hustle. Today, we make moves. MTN.
What is your money doing right now? Is it lazing around in that other account because you're not sure where to move it for premium growth? Well, let's make it work hard in a Standard Bank Money Market Select Investment Account, where we'll grow it with a nominal interest of up to 7.9% on a minimum deposit of 100,000 Rand. Plus, you get access to your funds anytime. Open yours online or on our app today. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
My family's struggling with snotty noses and phlegmy coughs.
Oh no! Have you tried ACC?
ACC 600 is a convenient one-a-day effervescent tablet from 14 years of age, or now also in a no water needed fruity flavored sherbet-like granules that dissolve in your mouth. Ideal for the on-the-go adult. Ask for ACC 600 effervescent or oral powder at your nearest pharmacy to get rid of the snotties and flemings. And trust, if it doesn't say ACC, it's not ACC.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. We start in the Eastern Cape, where the Walter Sisulu University has shut down following a student protest this morning. It's believed one student has been shot and killed, allegedly by security guards on campus. We cross now live to Nhlanhla Mabaso, who is outside campus in Mthatha. Nhlanhla, what is happening there?
Well, Fiso, from where I'm standing at the campus gate, public order police officers have dispersed students. From our understanding, there was a protest where a student was shot and killed. EWN has now learned that angry protesting student then tossed a car belonging to one of the guards. We can also see large smoke coming near the student accommodation from inside the campus. Students and workers living outside the university's Fiso are being turned away. Journalists tried to approach the students but were pelted with stones. Police are yet to comment on the matter. Nhlanhla Mabaso, Eyewitness News. I'm reporting live from outside the Walter Sisulu University campus in Mthatha.
The High Court in the Western Cape is expected to rule on the admissibility of two confessions in the Jocelyn Smith trial. For the last 2 weeks, the court has heard a trial within a trial to determine whether the confession statements made by Jacqueline Apollos, one of the accused in the matter, can be used as evidence by the state. Apollos is on trial along with Stefano van Rijn and Jocelyn's mother Kelly Smith for the child's disappearance more than a year ago. Carlo Peterson reports.
Prosecutor Auredana Heerman will continue her cross-examination of Jacqueline Apollos today. Last week, Heerman asked Apollos why he did not report his alleged torture and injuries to authorities after his arrest. Apollos claims he was tortured and beaten repeatedly by 5 men while he was being interrogated in March last year. He alleges detectives told him what to say in his confession statement or the torture would continue. Several senior police officers who have so far testified in this human trafficking trial say they have no knowledge of the alleged torture. Heerman also questioned Apollos about why it took so long to report the alleged incident. The trial within a trial continues today. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News, Saldanha Bay.
More arrests are imminent as police continue to investigate a deadly shooting inside the Wynberg Magistrates Court. Serious violent crime detectives made a breakthrough over the weekend when they arrested a woman who allegedly masterminded last week's attack. She made her first court appearance yesterday, and at the same time, a second suspect was taken into custody. A taxi operator from Vrygrond who was facing murder and attempted murder charges was killed in the suspected hit. Lauren Isaacs reports.
Police say 4 more arrests are on the cards in connection with the brazen shooting inside court exactly a week ago. Meanwhile, the alleged mastermind, Shireen Matthews, is due back in the dock next Wednesday. Security at Wynberg Magistrates Court was beefed up as Matthews made her first appearance yesterday, with security guards conducting thorough searches and leading members of the public through a metal detector upon entering the building. Following last week's murder, the deceased's attorney told Eyewitness News the metal detectors at that court were not working. Acting Provincial Police Commissioner Bongani Maqashalala attended court proceedings.
Due to the preliminary threat assessment that we are having, we decided to beef up the security at this court. We are going to look at others because we don't want anything of this nature.
Maqashalala says discussions will be had with the Justice Department as access control is their responsibility. Lauren Isaacs, Eyewitness News.
And U.S. immigration authorities have arrested another university student who participated in pro-Palestinian campus protests. Mohsin Madawi was handcuffed while attending an interview to become an American citizen. His lawyers claim President Donald Trump's mounting crackdown on immigration student protesters violates the U.S. Constitution. A Palestinian born in the occupied West Bank, Madawi has been a legal U.S. permanent resident since 2015. He was set to graduate next month and he was planning on attending a master's program. He is the co-founder of a Palestinian student group at the university alongside Mahmoud Khalil, a face of the movement who Trump has also been trying to expel since his March arrest. Gold is trading at $3,227.41 an ounce. The rand is at 18.79 to the dollar, 24.83 to the pound, 21.33 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $65.30 a barrel.
Leaving Orlando, Soweto, there's bumper-to-bumper traffic in Nooit-Gesig. This is on the N17 eastbound between the Soweto Highway and the N1. Also heading into the Joburg CBD. Expect bumper-to-bumper traffic on the M1 northbound between Boysons Road and the double-decker section. Also coming in from Germiston, heading into the Joburg CBD. Expect some delays on the M2 westbound. This is between Joe Slovo Drive and the Crown Interchange due to an earlier accident. And leaving the Germiston CBD, there's slow-moving traffic. M2 west between Refinery Road and the Haldenes Interchange.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The developing story in EWN this hour. A student has been shot and killed at the Walter Sisulu University during a protest.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. 702.
We're listening to you. 702.
Live
on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856,
92.7
and 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Seven minutes past 10, you're listening to the Clement Manyathela show. Tshidi Madia in for Clement. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock, after which Mandy takes over with the midday report. I think she might not be in today. I think it might be Jane Dutton standing in for Mandy Wiener. We were discussing in the open line the issue of Mcebisi Jonas. We'll continue with it. But remember, still to come, we'll be looking at the reopening of inquests into Apartheid era crimes. That's a conversation between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, after which we'll have the World of Work, followed by the health and wellness feature. There's a lot of commentary on the Mcebisi Jonas appointment. We'll get into it. But there's an interesting tweet here from Kingmaker who says that caller raised a compelling point. ANC leaders started companies solely for empowerment deals. That's no mark for a real business person. This links to Brian Molefe's testimony at the Zondo Commission, where he demonstrated why Glencoe and Cyril Ramaphosa on their side. This is a question mark, really, on a point I made that Mcebisi Jonas is seen as a businessman. Donald Trump supposedly likes those because he fancies himself to be a successful one. He fancies himself, not the real picture, if you actually look at his business dealings over the years. So we will have a conversation. We'll speak now to different people to make sense of what this appointment of Mcebisi Jonas as a special envoy to the US means.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
All right, so we are joined now on the line by various experts or guests will help us make sense of this particular appointment, what it means. I've got Ryan Smith, who's a Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. We'll get their view. We'll also get the view of an academic and, of course, Chairperson of the Public Interest South Africa. He's reacted to the news, of course. I don't know if you saw the statement coming from the ANC yesterday. The ANC welcoming the appointment, of course, saying that the move reaffirms government's strategic intent to deepen bilateral and multilateral relations anchored in mutual respect and shared interest. I'm joined on the line, as I said, by the DA Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. Ryan Smith joins me now on the line. Good morning, Ryan. Welcome to Radio 702, and thank you for your time. Just the DA's first take on the news coming from presidency on this appointment of Mcebisi Jonas.
Thanks, Tshidi, and good morning to your listeners. I mean, look, it remains the prerogative of the president to decide who diplomatic envoys are. However, if you look at the fact that the relationship with the United States of America is in a very perilous position at the moment and really on the rocks, we need to be extremely pragmatic about who we send to Washington. And we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we vet potential candidates very carefully, because clearly there's a lot more detail that goes into these appointments and certainly a lot more scrutiny. And I think that we really need to learn a lesson here with the USA and just be a little bit more careful in the process going forward.
Is Mcebisi the right person? I don't hear that being said. I understand what you're looking for more broadly. Is the DA happy with the pick of Mcebisi Jonas as the special envoy?
Look, I think that it's wise to send someone who's a businessman. I think that you've spoken about that earlier on the show. You need somebody primarily who's going there to represent South Africa's economic interests, which is the most, I think, important factor that is now placed at risk with our perilous relationship that we have with the United States. I think it's very good that Mcebisi Jonas is a businessman, that he has some business acumen, and that he can go and represent the economic interests, certainly over and above the diplomatic interests of South Africa there as well. It is very unfortunate, obviously, that he has, or that his comments previously could be seen as an impediment to getting the ear of the administration. And I think it's important that we work to repair that relationship. And we certainly hope that the Trump administration will be able to maybe look beyond that and see this as an important, as I said, economic deployment. And I think in that line, Mcebisi Jonas should be, we hope, I think, a very good appointment.
Is there a difference of opinions in the DA about this appointment? I noticed yesterday, I mean, what you're saying is very much in line with what one of your ministers, D. McPherson, put out, saying that Mcebisi Jonas is a solid pair of hands at this time. Yet at the same time, Emma Powell, who's the spokesperson for the DA's international relations, we couldn't find her yesterday, but she did put out a tweet, and her tweet was a simple thing. It was a retweet of those Ahmed Kathrada comments. Is there something to be made of that? Is there a difference of opinions about who should be, if Mcebisi is actually fit for purpose?
Well, look, I think there's a series of personal opinions that people have about any diplomatic appointment. I mean, regardless of who you ask, some people may say that it's a good appointment, others may say it's a bad appointment. The fact of the matter is that we need to look at diplomatic appointments, certainly with the United States of America, in terms of strategy. What is this appointment bringing to South Africa strategically? Does this person have the relevant qualifications to get what we want out of this relationship with a foreign state? And it's not the purview of personal opinion, quite frankly. We need to look at it in a very impartial and objective manner, and that's certainly how diplomacy is carried out around the world. So, various people within all parties, I think, are going to have their personal opinions on Mcebisi Jonas. I think it's wise to raise things that he may have said previously, his biography, certain things that he might have done in his previous positions, because we need to be aware of where this person comes from, what their particular profile is. It's important when we look at those positions. But ultimately, it must be done in a manner that is constructive, that is going to represent South Africa's best interests, but also bearing in mind how we are going to be perceived and how we are going to be received by the country of posting.
And just very quickly, Ryan, the priorities, just a very quick list of what the DA thinks is important for this envoy to get on top of.
Well, first and foremost, we need to repair the relationship with the United States of America. It has been, I would say, almost completely broken. We know that the chances of the African Growth and Opportunity Act being renewed are very, very slim at this point. And South Africa is deeply, deeply reliant on the preferential market access that we have to the United States because of that legislation. And so in the wake of that not being reviewed, South Africa is going to face real economic hardship. So we need to, first and foremost, repair the relationship with the United States, bearing in mind that the likelihood of AGOA being renewed is very, very slim. And on the back of that, we need to try and secure, certainly from a more bilateral level, greater trade opportunity with the United States. If we don't get AGOA renewed, it doesn't mean that we can't secure a new trade deal or a new opportunity for South Africa in the United States. Trump, regardless of what people may say about him, he is a businessman. And I think that he knows what's in the best interest of the USA. And it's up to our diplomats to go there and leverage that in the best interest of South Africa to make sure that we get what we want. So economically, first and foremost, I think we need to look at that pragmatically as our first objective. Smooth over relations, fix access to trade in the United States, and move forward, I think, on that basis.
All right, thank you so much. That's Ryan Smith, who's the DA Deputy Spokesperson on International Relations. I want to bring on now Professor Christopher Isike, who's Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. Professor, good morning and welcome to Radio 702.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Professor, it is a critical time for such an appointment to be made, and I imagine what he faces is a mammoth task. Your thoughts about what we are attempting to do, and not picking an ambassador as yet, but actually opting to send Mcebisi Jonas as the first of our special envoys to the U.S.?
But look, in my view, my first preference is for South Africa not to send anyone to the US at this stage until it knows exactly what the US wants and whether it can, and then determine for itself whether it can give the US that. But also wait for the US to play its hand, and the US has played its hand to some extent in the appointment of an ambassador. I believe that the president is doing this at this time because he probably wants to use this appointment of an envoy to negotiate the acceptance of the envoy. I mean, use his own America's negotiation with South Africa on accepting South Africa's ambassador to, America's ambassador to South Africa, and use that to then push for America's acceptance of an envoy at this stage. Unless, of course, Mr. Jonas would be elevated eventually to become an ambassador. That's a possibility. If that is what the president has in mind, then it makes sense to send an envoy, get that envoy in, and start the repair of the relationship before upgrading him to a full ambassador if the envoy makes good use of this opportunity.
Professor, what if I'm hearing you correctly? It almost sounds like Mcebisi Jonas has actually been sent on a fact-finding mission that would have been easier if he knew exactly what he was targeting. What do you expect him to find? Because part of what Ibrahim Rasool had said when he came back home, or at least in that lecture at the Mapungube Institute for Strategic Planning, Mistra. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to remember what it was. But part of that lecture that he was participating in, virtual lecture, he then said that the State Department is not set up, and when you are meant to go knock on doors to fix relations, there are actually no doors because the appointments have not been made. What do we then expect him to find when we aren't sure, 100% sure, on paper at least, what the issue is?
Well, that's why I said that the president may be tying his appointment to the appointment of the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. So usually when an ambassador is appointed by a sending country to a host country, that ambassador, there are discussions between the foreign relations departments of both countries for acceptance, right? So the receiving country can indicate that they do not want a particular appointment for any reason. And then there are discussions and negotiations. My belief is that South Africa may be using this opportunity to put forward someone that the administration would have to then accept in order for South Africa to accept the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. Now, that would be a win, and part of those negotiations would be for the envoy to be able to have access to, for example, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to open opportunities for mending the relations and then getting into discussions around what the U.S. really want and what South Africa can do to mend relations between both countries. And this is where perhaps the appointment of Mr. Jonas is significant because, one, he's a business person, two, he's very steeped in the liberation and ANC, of course, South African politics, would be in a very good position to be able to push South Africa's interests in ways that will advance South Africa without necessarily offending the sensibilities of the United States.
The comments that were uncovered that he made back in 2020 when Trump was attempting to become the 46th U.S. president that didn't succeed when Joe Biden became president. Will they matter? How complicated does it make this mission for Mcebisi Jonas?
Well, I'm sure that the United States will not be looking for someone who has never said anything about the United States, to become an envoy or someone they can talk to. Otherwise, South Africa would not be talking to Trump himself, right? So this is there is politics involved. There's also business involved. Like many have said, Trump is transactional. He's a businessman. And to be honest, he doesn't respect weak leaders. So if you're able to present yourself as someone who's able to explain yourself and present your points, keep to the issues, I'm sure that he would see value in accepting and glossing over whatever Jonas may have said. I mean, there are people in his cabinet right now who said horrible things about him, and today they are all in the same cabinet. So that shouldn't really be an issue at all. In fact, like I said, if they are expecting that to be someone who has never said anything about Trump, then they will not find such a person, in South Africa.
Lastly, Professor, there's always voices that say South Africa must make a decision about what to prioritize. Many people believe that what's happening between South Africa and the US is actually about the ICGA matter. It's about the Middle East and South Africa's stance with the people of Palestine, saying that South Africa must actually put itself first, that it must think about its economic position in the world and its economic concerns, saying that it must backtrack. It must actually withdraw from that particular matter. And also, at the same time, people compare it to how Lesotho's responded. I mean, Lesotho supposedly is seemingly pandering to the US to try and make sure that it eases relations and makes things easier for themselves. Your sense of, I'm asking you to make a comparison, if you may, really between the two different responses and the calls for South Africa to change its mind and its stance as far as its own foreign policy approach is concerned.
Well, first of all, South Africa is not Lesotho, so South Africa doesn't have to necessarily pander. South Africa has critical resources that the United States needs more than South Africa needs from the US. And if South Africa also has China as a trading partner. If this is only about economic interest and money, South Africa would probably be more interested in pandering to China. South Africa has not done just that. It has pandered to the US as much as it panders to China. Why? Because it believes that its interests are important, but also those interests are tied to values. And those values determine its foreign policy. So it is the question of values that made it undermine, if you like, the US 2 years ago when it allowed Russia to come do, the test run that it did, the military drills it did in South Africa. Right? It was based on friendship, and friendship is important to South Africa, especially when you look at its history. So it's a combination of things, but the fact that South Africa continues to maintain it to follow due process and diplomatic channels to resolve its problems with the US indicates that it considers that friendship to be important. And that friendship is not only about the economics, it's also about the people-to-people relations and history of people who helped South Africa to get through apartheid right there in the US at a people level.
All right. I just want to leave it at that. Thank you so much. That's Professor Christopher Isike, Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. I want to quickly bring in now Chairperson of Public Interest South Africa, Tebogo Khaas, who's joining me also on the line. Tebogo, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702. You and I had a very late night conversation about Mcebisi Jonas. We went kind of back and forth for a little bit, and I see that you have released a statement. And the big recognition here is also that the special envoy, as much as it's important, it cannot deal with the challenges alone, can it?
Absolutely.
Oh, no. The line is really patchy, Tebogo. I'm going to ask for the producers to just stabilize your line for a second. While I do that, though, I'm going to play one or two of your voice notes on this particular topic.
Tshidi, hi. I hear what the gentleman is saying, but we need to look at the bigger perspective here. Are we really fighting for a relationship with somebody who does not want us there? Why are we fighting so hard? The United States has just over around 300 million people. The world is full of people above 6 billion people. There are other avenues we can look at. There are other markets we can diversify. We don't necessarily have to look at the US as the all in all, as the almighty. If they don't want to trade, then they don't want to trade. Let's find other markets and go elsewhere. We are not really forced to really fight for this relationship that we are seeing that we are currently not wanted. We move away, we take everything we have elsewhere, and we build other relationships. You start from scratch. We don't have to rely on America only. There are bigger and greater things out there other than the Americas. There's South America, there's Canada, there's Asia, there's Russia, there's Australia. There's a lot of other places we can go to. Can we just start using our imagination and not only focus on America?
Thank you for that WhatsApp. We can start from scratch. I think that's easier said than done. I'm going to try again with Tebogo Khaas. Tebogo, welcome back. I think hopefully your line is steady and it's playing ball now. The challenges are mammoth. People say we can start from scratch. It's not that easy, actually. A lot is at
No,
risk.
absolutely. No, absolutely. It's not that easy to, and thank you again for calling me on the normal telecom line than the Starlink that you tried earlier.
That's a terrible jab. It's okay. We know how you feel about Elon Musk. Note taken. I'm sure Lesotho's heard you too. Continue.
Yeah, but on a more serious note, we really shouldn't, like we said in the statement, we really should recognize that it cannot be left to one person to resolve what seems to be a singular problem afflicting Trump, not only South Africa, but across the board. And certainly, it takes two to tango. So we should rely on both the goodwill on both countries as well as mutual respect, and the commitment by both parties, by both governments, to ensure that these concerns are addressed. And it is only when we treat each other with respect that we can then be able to make progress. But if we are going to be condescending, as Mr. Trump has been on all instances when he deals with South Africa, it cannot be that we are left to be beggars, or to be seen as beggars, or to be left to be seen as kowtowing to whatever he or any other leader, for that matter, throws at us.
The issue about respectability is what you and I actually argued about in essence, because while you make a very valid point, in my head, it takes somebody who's logical, who's decent, to function within the realm of to operate within those rules, those terms of engagement with people. Unfortunately, we are dealing with somebody who has shown himself to not care what the rules are. My argument is always that if he did care about rules and order and diplomacy and how to engage with others, then we wouldn't be here as a country, because the disinformation he continues to peddle would not be a factor. The concerns you have, if at all, about what Mcebisi Jonas will have. I saw some South Africans saying, a lot of people on Twitter saying that, after the Ahmed Kathrada comments came to light, that, he'll be turned back upon arrival. He will not be allowed to get through the airport, to get through customs. He'll be stopped there and then. And I don't fancy it being impossible, to be honest.
Look, there's no guarantee that anybody will be treated with respect by Trump. Even those who may have been praised singing, even if you were to sell Ken Kunene and others who are always praising Trump and the Republicans, there's no guarantee that Trump will act rationally. So that would be the biggest insult. He had a whole president of Ukraine, diminished to a small boy the other day. Not only him, but also his cabinet ministers who weighed in. And you can therefore not. Trump is mercurial. He's not somebody that you can really predict what mood he will be at when he, unless of course you're appeasing him, then he'll be very nice to you. But we're not going there, or we shouldn't be sending somebody there to go and appease him, or to kowtow to before him, like kiss his ring. Because certainly, as a sovereign, we also, much as we really respect the U.S. and value the trade between the two countries, it cannot be that we actually give away our own dignity because of one leader who will be gone, by the way, in 4 years or so.
Right.
And then we'll have to then work back and try and recover our own dignity, which have been shredded before.
Right. I was going to leave it at that. The line is starting to behave like a Starlink line all over again. That's Tebogo Khaas, who's chairperson of Public Interest South Africa. That issue of Vladimir Zelensky, I almost forgot about Ukraine's president, who's actually due in this country on a working visit, I think next week, if I'm correct. He was berated. And from the time that Trump won the U.S. elections, Vladimir went above and beyond to make himself amenable to him, to try and pander to Trump. And look at what it all amounted to. And that's the thing about all the countries that want to cut a deal or get something out of the U.S. is you must think twice about what it's like to go to Washington. Think twice about the White House and how he likes to put a play, right? The political theater for the global media, the eyes that are watching. I mean, I'm addicted to those 11:30. I used to be addicted to those 11:30 Rose Garden briefings for the wrong reasons. Obviously. It's 10:30. Here are your news headlines.
Thanks, Tshidi. Good morning. A student has been shot and killed during a protest at the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape. It's understood that a security guard opened fire this morning on campus when protesters allegedly torched a vehicle near a student accommodation. The institution in Mthatha has halted all operations for the day. The NPA says reopening inquests into apartheid-era crimes is a complex process. A fresh inquest into the death of former ANC President General Chief Albert Luthuli is continuing for a second day in the KwaZulu-Natal High Court in Pietermaritzburg. The NPA is disputing that the apartheid government's version that Luthuli died after former US President Joe Biden for the 3-year conflict. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 11 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
At this stage, if you're leaving Tembisa heading towards OR Tambo International Airport, you can expect about a 20-minute delay on the R20 southbound. That's R21 southbound between the R25 Popsfontein off-ramp and the R23 Benoni off-ramp. There's also slow-moving traffic. That's coming into the Joburg CBD on the M2 westbound, traveling from Germiston. This is between Joslovo Drive and the Crown Interchange. Also, if you're leaving Soweto, that's in the Nooitgesig area. Slow-moving traffic, that's N17 eastbound between the Soweto Highway and the N1. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in Sunning Hill at Witkoppen and after. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Aubrey Masango.
Weekday evenings,
8 to midnight.
Look at what the producers of the so-called luxury products in China are beginning to reveal. That all of your beloved luxury products, Bo Mang Mang Vuitton, Bo Mang Mang Gucci, are made there in China. They commission Chinese production companies to make these things for a fraction of the cost that you buy them for. They don't know it's made there in China. And we've always known that. I mean, that's where that Soyas Nyaga came from.
Aubrey Masango.
8 to midnight on 702.
702.
Dear Journal, trying to be an adult, day 3215. Checked my bank statements. Payday me and rest of the month me have drastically different budgets. Urgently need to discuss this with Payday me, but I can't seem to get hold of her. She's always out on the jawl.
Recently removed from the family payroll? Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's like 570 Rand a month, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
Hollywood Bets invites you to a drop of endless rewards and riches with Spinner Zonke prize drops. Gear up for exhilarating entertainment and a chance to win a share of a whopping 2.5 million Rand in cash and prizes when you bet 2 Rand or more on selected pragmatic play games every Monday, Tuesday and Thursday. Fortune favors the bold. So log in and play between 12:30 and 10:30 p.m. and you could spin into phenomenal prizes. Bet now. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bet supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
I'm a person with vision, and I need a car that will catapult me into the future. There's no time to waste dreaming. It's time to do and discover the extraordinary. My M-Zoom R-Style and I set the pace. It's my wingman. On the dance floor or with the CEO, time is money, and I want the best. Upgrading to the M-Zoom R-Style at the M-Zoom Executive price is a steal of a deal. At 439,900 Rand, get yours this April before the VAT increase. GAC, where craft meets technology.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
10:35, the Clement Manyathela show. Tshidi Madia standing in for Clement. But Aubrey are regularly chaser, regularly rasa, Hong Kongs, because that thing that he's talking about with the Chinese suppliers, talking about all the luxury goods, right? All the factories where they come from, it's funny. It's fascinating. If you're on TikTok or any social media app, I think it's the big talk of the town. But the fact that Bra Aubrey put on Sinyaka, cream of the crop, cream of the crop. So anyway, we're going to be speaking about reopening of Inquest this hour. Of course, remember, between 11 and 12, we'll bring you the World of Work feature as well as health and wellness. In the World of Work, we'll be looking at how do you navigate the multiple religious holidays. We are going into the Easters at the end of this week. How do you navigate that in the workplace? And between 11:30 and 12 o'clock, we'll look at health and wellness, understanding the science behind how sugar impacts your child's brain. But of course, for now, let's speak about the inquest into the Apartheid era crimes.
Join us.
Let's walk the talk.
This is 702.
So I am... So if you're paying attention to what's news coming out of Maritzburg, the High Court has started an inquest, started yesterday, into the deaths of Nobel Peace Prize laureate and President General of the ANC, Chief Albert Luthuli, and anti-apartheid lawyer Griffith Mcebisi. If you speak to a lot of activists, particularly when I listen to people like the founding leader of the founding NDPP, National Director of Public Prosecutions, Bulelani Ngcuka, he speaks a lot about the Mcenge and the impact the Mcenge family had on them, and how they, to date, many of them still have questions about what really happened. So these inquests are being held in KZN, and so it leads us to a question about the importance of these. Mind you, 2025 marks 30 years, if I'm correct, since the TRC was established. As you know, there's still many, many questions. A lot of people very unhappy about the TRC process and whether or not it achieved what it sought to do when it was established. So we are going to be now in conversation with Imtiaz Kaji, who's nephew of Ahmed Timel. Do you remember that inquest? A very important inquest, I think, which came to a very different conclusion to what was the initial inquest during the apartheid era. I'll speak to him, but I'll also bring on Musa Letiani, who's a senior programs officer dealing with TRC matters at the Foundation for Human Rights. They are trying to agitate for more of these inquests into those apartheid era killings to be dealt with. I want to bring on the line now Imtiaz Kaji, who's nephew of Ahmed Timel. Imtiaz, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702.
Good morning, Tshidi. Many thanks for hosting me.
As the Luthuli family sitting through the inquest, I kept thinking of you as well, because the Ahmed Timel family didn't give up a say, and you've walked their shoes, so you understand what they're going through at this point in time. What's been going through your mind based on your own family struggle to have that inquest and to get to the finding that you came to eventually?
Look, Tshidi, I can totally understand, what the families are going through, because speaking from my own experiences as a nephew, somebody who's dedicated my entire life, to uncover who my uncle was, why he was arrested, why he was detained and tortured, and why was he thrown out of the tent building of the notorious John Foster Square police station. So a very, very significant day, a momentous day. In the Nkenge matter, they did not only lose one parent, they lost both parents. And yes, the inquest into the dead has started, and hopefully the one into the mum will start sometime soon. So the trauma, it's unbearable. It's unbearable. But the fact of the matter remains that these matters must be confronted for a various range of reasons. Families want to know the truth about what happened to their loved ones. Now, there are many in families who have differing views. Some of the view that the matters must remain closed because it's too painful to reopen. There are others that are very comfortable with the posthumous awards that are being given to their loved ones, the renaming of institutions and so forth. And again, that is their view. But there are others like myself who don't just want the inquest to be reopened, but they want perpetrators responsible for the killing of our loved ones to be held accountable. So very likely in the inquest in KZN, in the Luthuli matter, perpetrators have passed on.
Yes.
But you see, the principal point is that when we bring these issues back in the public domain, this is not a personal favor that we're asking government, to respond to. Our loved ones dedicated their lives to the banned and exiled African National Congress so that they could, maybe not in their lifetime, but in future lifetimes, for people to live in a free and democratic South Africa. And that is what we are enjoying with all its challenges today. So bringing back these apartheid era inquests, reopening them, Yes, for families, it's difficult, it's traumatic, but they welcome it. They embrace it because it gives them an opportunity to find some levels of closure. But at another level, CD, the significance of these matters being reopened is that it must conscientize us. It must remind us that men and women paid the ultimate price so that we can live in a democratic South Africa. Our freedom was never given on a golden platter by F.W. de Klerk. And our loved ones never died so that their friends can become multimillionaires in a democratic South Africa at the expense of millions of other South Africans. So, yes, welcoming for the families, difficult time, traumatic. From my own experiences, I think the most horrific, despite reading about the injuries on my uncle's body and the wounds inflicted on him for basically the duration of my life, but to hear it in an inquest, when a forensic pathologist went into vivid details about the nature of wounds inflicted on his body, literally broke me. And to make matters worse, he was unconscious and human beings took him from the top of the building and they threw his body down. And what I wanted at the TRC and post-TRC is for those perpetrators, not vengeance against them, CD, wanted them to take responsibility and to ask for forgiveness. And I think that is the principal point that we are making today. They don't take responsibility for the crimes that they had committed. The security police officers, the National Party politicians, the majority of white South Africans who benefited under apartheid and continue benefiting under an ANC-led government. No accountability, no responsibility, no apology. And that is why there are many, even within our own ranks, that don't want us to pursue these matters. They tell us it's too painful. But you see, CD, in between all of this, when we are focusing only on the truth resurfacing, the challenge that many people face is that the truth might reveal itself, which will mean that there were those within our communities who collaborated with the apartheid regime.
Yes.
And they live amongst our ranks, and they stand today on public platforms and talk about good governance and democracy. And when these matters get reopened, CD, they are the first ones to ask, who's reopening these matters?
So
sorry?
I want to come in there a little bit, because when you say that, what comes to my mind is Chris Hani. Part of the reason why his family remains also aggrieved, and just last week we marked 32 years since he was assassinated, is that they believe that those men who killed Mianus Walush, what happened there was supposedly in concert, possibly with his own comrades, and that's what they're trying to find out. But I want to go back a little bit. You speak about how these people were those who served the government at the time, because the Mcenge matter, from my understanding yesterday, is an issue because they're seeking to be funded by the police, because these are people, the perpetrators, alleged perpetrators, who served the state at the time, and they now want to be funded by the state in order to try and deal with the particular matter. So there is that frustration, and I imagine for some of the loved ones, part of that is seeing a state that hasn't come to the party. The fact that we're dealing with these after 30 years, that some of these should have been revisited sooner. Is that not frustration? What does that tell you about the democratic government's appetite to look back?
You are 100% correct. Again, let me share my own experiences with you. Murder accused in the Timor matter, João Rodrigues City. The inquest verdict was issued on the 12th of October 2017, reversing the finding from suicide to murder. He gets charged on the 30th of June 2018, right? It took 3 years or 4 years for him to have over 20 court criminal appearances. They were all postponed. His legal fees were paid by the state. I submitted a PAIA application to identify or to get a sense of the cost that the state had incurred. And around 9 or 10 court appearances, the state had spent 3.5 million rands on his legal fees. 3.5 million. And ultimately, when he passed on the 7th of September 2021, the matter was removed of the criminal court roll. So this is a money-making business for his legal counsels, and it is not their fault because the Constitution allows them to exercise their rights. So we need to revisit the negotiated settlement in the country, the TRC, and a whole range of other matters to get to the bottom of these answers.
So ultimately, that's where we need to go. I'm going to leave it at that with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think you can hear the pain in Imtez's voice. You can hear the frustration, the trauma. about dealing with these apartheid era killings. Imtiaz Kaji is nephew of Ahmed Timel. Gabriel, I want to quickly bring you in. Gabriel is a caller from Sandton. You also wanted to speak on these apartheid era killings?
Yes, certainly so. I also have a personal experience with it in the case of President Banga. He defended me as I was a student. I was only 17 years old. And that saved me from going to Robben Island. And he had been a warm, lovely man, brilliant lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and all that. It is encouraging to hear that that case is being opened. And so with that of Chief Albert Lutuli, I'm also close to the family, Albertina and the children. However, I think that NPA is not can do more, because in my case and my experience personally, and in the family of Joe Kabi, who was assassinated by the South African contingent of assassins in Harare, the family and I have been trying to get the NPA to open the case as was promised at the TRC when we made submissions there, and nothing is happening. So those areas is areas that the NPA could expedite or could assist in getting closure, cases going forward. Those people are dying off now. In the case of Kabi, in the case of Kabi, Mrs. Kabi is the only direct member and the spouse to Mr. Kabi who is living. His children are now all dead. It leaves the family and us to feel like it is being dragged on until everybody dies, and therefore the perpetrators go scot-free.
Right,
there is closure that needs to be done.
All right, Kabir, I think that's an important point there at the end. There's closure that needs to be done. When we come back, we'll speak to the Foundation for Human Rights on what else is being done to try and get these cases dealt, these inquests reopened, so families can get answers about what really happened to their loved ones. But first, let's take a break.
The Midday Report.
Weekdays,
12 to 1.
You're still in your office and working, Minister?
I'm not sure what the alternative is. I'm here to do a job, and I think we are starting to really see momentum in this space now.
I imagine you need human beings to actually operate these drones. Do we have sufficient capacity?
So in terms of the procurement of these devices, the training is included in the package. The partnership with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform is also continuing. So it's really exciting, and people will start seeing these devices in action at the border posts.
Dr. Leon Schreiber.
The Midday Report.
With Mandy Wiener.
12 to 1 on 702.
702.
Having the right tech is a big step towards taking your business to the next level, and MTN is here to help. From reliable connectivity to cutting-edge digital tools, MTN provides the tech solutions that help your business succeed. Plus, as an MTN business customer, you'll also get special deals on data, voice, and even phone packages. So visit an MTN store or mtnbusiness.co.za today and get everything you need to work smarter, not harder. Today we make moves. MTN.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Drive your success and trade like a champion. CFI, a global leading broker now in South Africa. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit cfi.trade today. CFI Financial is an authorized financial services provider.
CFI, empower yourself.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We are also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comments, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we are not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. Email bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more, visit bccsa.co.za. Let's walk the talk.
702.
10:50. We are in conversation with various guests looking at the reopening of inquests into apartheid era crimes. Just before the break, we spoke to Imtiaz Kaji, who's nephew of Ahmed Timel, and he spoke about the trauma of this process, but the importance of this process. I want to bring on the line now via Zoom Musa Letiani, who's a senior program officer dealing with TRC matters at the Foundation for Human Rights. Musa, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702. Musa, it's not about justice. It's not just about the families finding out what happened. It's also about the records. It's important to note what actually happened to people's loved ones, what happened in South Africa's journey towards democracy, isn't it?
Good morning, TD, and good morning to your viewers at home. Thank you so much for having the Foundation for Human Rights. Indeed, in light of yesterday's judgment, you're absolutely right that the truth is important for this process, and that's what's at stake here. These are no ordinary matters. And I think that's also what the nephew of Ahmed Timel highlighted, is that these matters and these cases happened at a time when our history did not look like it did today. Our democracy was centered on many of these atrocious acts, and in fact, making sure that we prosecute them. And so when this act, when this recommendation and this promise into democracy was not delivered in light of how the TRC recommended by the post-apartheid South Africa, it's been a huge disappointment and betrayal to the families. And so you're absolutely right. This is an important matter. It is a huge milestone to see, first of all, that apartheid is a crime against humanity, but most importantly, that this will put greater momentum on the reopened inquests and other ongoing TRC-related matters.
One would have imagined that we would see these more frequently over the 30 years of democracy. We're seeing almost like a rush now. I understand that there are over 20 cases that the NPA is looking at. One is to question why it's taken so long, though, to get to a point where these inquests are being opened, why families had to fight so hard to get a hearing from government, from the NPA. I think I remember when then Justice Minister Ronald Lamola said that they'll go in this particular direction and look at these inquests. Why was the journey so long?
And that is the question that the families ask themselves, and what the foundation has been asking since the early 2000s, when we started on our first case, the Nokuthula Simelane case in the early 2002. And it's this particular period from 2002 to 2003 that we want to know exactly why. Because through that case, which is still ongoing and has not been resolved, we've been able to understand some form of political interference that we would like to understand the nature and extent of. And so through different, our current constitutional damages application, our strategic intervention, that is one of the remedies that we seek, to understand exactly why the state did not act. And to understand and to bring forth important people who were implicated, as we saw in the Nokuthula Simelane case, in the Rodriguez versus NDPP case, where an affidavit by the former NDPP advocate Vusi Bukoli was also submitted in the Nokuthula Simelane case, stating that there was a decision to bypass applications or to bring some other form of process. And so it is these questions that we want to understand in light of these important judgments. Why was this decision taken? But most importantly, now that we have this important judgment that says it was a crime against humanity, hopefully we'll be one step closer to understanding why there was no justice for crimes of apartheid in South Africa 30 years later.
When you listen to some of the testimonies, including expert witnesses, are you satisfied with the system's prosecutors and the system's ability to grasp the complexity of some of these particular crimes, alleged crimes, and what happened? Are you happy that they understand the nature of the crimes that they're looking into?
You know, that is also the challenge that we've noted, and why the COSIS 4 judgment is so important, is that at a domestic level, the FHR, through our various pro bono lawyers and partners across South Africa, we found that domestically there were challenges with moving the cases. And it could be for a variety of reasons that we hope to look into. But yes, domestically there have been systemic challenges into looking at these cases as common law cases, as ordinary matters. And so we hope that perhaps while the fact that we've escalated the gravity of these cases and added international gravity to them, we should be able to understand the crime of apartheid, because that is what is at stake. How we understand apartheid is being brought to forth, that it was acts of a very atrocious nature, that they were systemic. And so perhaps as we start to open these conversations on crimes of apartheid as crimes against humanity, the ordinary courts, our domestic courts, might be able to work through these cases better. But also, as we've opened up forums for justice and truth, perhaps now we could have complementary international tribunals, because now that is also part of what this judgment means, that it amplifies jurisdiction and avenues for relief and truth recovery and justice in South Africa. So indeed, we hope that this judgment will go a long way for apartheid prosecution.
And just lastly, through these matters, Musa, what kind of relief are you looking for? More so because in many of these cases, the perpetrators are likely to have also passed on.
That is quite the complex question, because it would also depend on how the family that is involved. And also, as you mentioned, these are cold cases and a lot of factors have to be attributed because, as you said, time is an essence. Many of the accused are of a senior age, and there are a lot of elements against the cases. But the most important thing, and what families have expressed, is that they would like the truth as to what exactly happened. Can you believe, Tshidi, that so many years later, Simelane does not know where her daughter is? That Utuli Kubeka still does not know what happened with the enforced disappearance. The Tlhapi family still do not know what happened to Boyki Tlhapi's enforced disappearance. And so these questions are actually what families want to know. What happened to our loved ones? Why? And so hopefully, we're one step closer. But at this point in time, what is at stake is exactly what was at stake 30 years ago. The truth, justice, and most importantly, accountability for why there's been a delay, but also a way forward for what happened.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it on that note. That's Musa Letea, and he was a senior program officer dealing with TRC matters at the Foundation for Human Rights.
Bongani Bingwa, 702 Breakfast.
Weekday mornings, 6 to 9.
The road safety issues ahead of Easter weekend.
There's going to be rain, lots of it. So reduce speed. Secondly, fatigue. Stop every 2 hours, and also the accumulation of stress creates anger. My big issue is children must be put in car seats. A baby just becomes a missile in an accident, and don't get behind a wheel after you have been drinking.
Minister of Transport, Barbara Creasy.
Bongani Bingwa, 6 to 9.
On 702.
In just 10 years, over 850 million winners have shared more than 31 billion rand with the National Lottery. That's not a dream, that's real money, won by real people, right here in Mzansi. So the question is, why not you? The next winner could come from your hometown. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Mitsumania is here, and it's bigger than ever. For a limited time only, experience unbeatable deals on the Mitsubishi Outlander, Eclipse Cross, and Triton. For a limited time, you can get up to 90,000 Rand on deal assistance. Adventure, performance, style, whatever you're after, we've got it at a price that'll blow you away. But hurry, these deals won't last. Visit your nearest Mitsubishi dealership now, before time runs out. Mitsubishi Motors, drive your ambition.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
Remember, still to come, we've got the World of Work and Health and Wellness coming up between 11 and 12 o'clock. At the World of Work, I want to know, I'm very curious about how your different companies manage your religious beliefs, right? So how your companies make space for your religious beliefs. How do they observe? How do they navigate your religious holidays? Do they respect your religious holidays? I want to have that conversation with you between 11 and 11:30. And I want to speak about the impact of sugar on children. You always hear that so-and-so's child, don't give them candy. So-and-so's child will be jumping up and down because of the sugar intake. So we'll try and get an understanding of how sugar actually affects your child's brain. But all of that will be between 11 and 12 o'clock. But now, for now though, here's your news headline.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. We begin with the developing story out of the Eastern Cape, where a student has been shot and killed during a protest at the Walter Sisulu University. It's understood that a security guard opened fire this morning on campus when protesters allegedly torched a vehicle near a student accommodation. The institution in Mthatha has halted all operations for the day. And Nhlanhla Mabaso joins us now live from campus. Nhlanhla, the last time we spoke to you, you were telling us that students were pelting stones at reporters. What's happening now?
Well, Sister, take a listen first at the singing that's taking place outside the campus. Well, Sister, those are students who have now gathered at the campus gate singing and demanding justice for one of their students that was shot and injured by a university official here at the Walter Sisulu main campus in Mthatha. From where I'm standing, Sister, a number of students singing and chanting, all of them with their faces covered, demanding justice, like I've mentioned, for their injured colleagues and the one that has been shot and killed. So we do understand that they were protesting over what they say are unresolved issues. So they say they've sent various memorandums to the university management raising concerns about the safety, especially in their accommodations. So they say that there are male security guards deployed at residences that only leave female students, and they've been raising concerns about their safety following some of sexual harassment scandals that have taken place here at the campus. That's not so long ago before you crossed live to this school. So we saw one of the officials who was trying to come in or clock into work and was chased by these protesting students. For now, so the protest and justice and a call for justice continues. Mabaso reporting live from the Walter Sisulu University in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape.
The NPA says reopening inquests into apartheid-era crimes is a complex process. A fresh inquest into the death of a former ANC President-General Chief Albert Luthuli is continuing for a second day in the KwaZulu-Natal High Court in Pietermaritzburg. The NPA is disputing the apartheid government's version that Luthuli died after being hit by a moving train. It was revealed in court yesterday that the renewed investigation into his death began in 2019. The NPA's Natasha Ramkinson-Kara says bringing the matter to this stage was a collaborative effort between government departments.
The NPA had to work very closely with the DPCI, the SAPS, and then the TRC units. In the NPA, we have a TRC component that deals specifically only with TRC cases, and very importantly as well, the National Archives. So information had to be sourced from the archives, etc. So yeah, it is a mammoth task, and we're pleased to be here today.
The High Court in the Western Cape is expected to rule on the admissibility of two confessions in the Jocelyn Smith trial. For the last 2 weeks, the court has heard a trial within a trial to determine whether the confession statements made by Shaquina Pollis, who's one of the accused in the matter, can be used as evidence by the state. Pollis is on trial along with Stefano van Rijn and Jocelyn's mother Kelly Smith for the child's disappearance more than a year ago. Carlo Peterson has more.
Prosecutor Aradana Yerman will continue her cross-examination of Jacqueline Pollis today. Last week, Yerman asked Pollis why he did not report his alleged torture and injuries to authorities after his arrest. Pollis claims he was tortured and beaten repeatedly by 5 men while he was being interrogated in March last year. He alleges detectives told him what to say in his confession statement or the torture would continue. Several senior police officers who have so far testified in this human trafficking trial say they have no knowledge of the alleged torture. Yerman also questioned Pollis about why it took so long to report the alleged incident. The trial within a trial continues today. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News, Saldanha Bay.
And US President Donald Trump has blamed Volodymyr Zelensky for starting the war with Russia a day after a massive Russian attack killed 35 people and injured over 100 others in Ukraine. Trump says the Ukrainian leader shared the blame with Russian President Vladimir Putin for millions of people killed in the Ukraine war. Trump also blamed former US President Joe Biden for the 3-year conflict. Trump's comments come after widespread outrage over Russia's attack on the Ukrainian city of Sumy on Sunday, which was the deadliest Russian attack on civilians this year. Gold is trading at $3,227.41 an ounce. The rand is at 18.79 to the dollar, 24.83 to the pound, 21.33 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $65.30 a barrel.
Heading into Devland, there's slow-moving traffic in the Naturina area. That's on the Golden Highway between Chris Hani and the N1. Also leaving the Joburg CBD, bumper-to-bumper traffic, M2 westbound between the Crown Interchange and Main Reef Road. And finally, look out for those faulty traffic lights in Rand Park Ridge at Bayers Nodia and the N1 North.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated showers and thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 25 and 26 degrees. The developing story in EWN this hour, a student has been shot and killed during a protest at the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
Thank you very much. Be sure that Eyewitness News Bulletin was, of course, brought to you by Khaas.co.za. At Khaas.co.za, find what moves you.
8 out of 10 radio listeners suffer from CAR or car advertising on repeat. Symptoms include fatigue, anxiety, and confusion. With so many car ads coming at you on your daily commute, buying or selling a car can feel overwhelming. But there is a cure.
Cars.co.za. Whatever car you want to buy or sell, cut through the and just go to Cars.co.za and let's find what moves you. Cars.co.za.
You are never alone.
702 listens. 702.
Live
On the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7.
And 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Seven minutes past 11. We are through to the third and final hour of the Clement Manyathela show. Tshidi Madia standing in for Clement. We've discussed a lot of Donald Trump today, but I think one of the most interesting conversations we've had is about the apartheid era crimes, the revisit, the inquests, and the importance of the families getting closure, setting the record straight about how we got to where we are. There's always that saying that if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeat it. Because I know that people always feel at odds about going back and looking at South Africa's very painful, very traumatic history. But it is important that it is alive with us and we recognize and that we answer questions from the past. Because you can't heal the wounds and you can't build nationhood if you don't navigate those issues. Coming up next is the world of work. How do you navigate religious holidays in the workplace? And remember, between 11:30 and 12, we'll be looking at the impact of sugar on children.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
All right, so it is the Easters, as I keep saying. So we're going into Good Friday, I think, at the end of the week. But there are a lot of people who've been observing religious holidays even throughout this week already. I keep telling people here at the office that I'm attempting to go back to church. So I took a day off for Ash Wednesday, very unlike me. But that leads me to the conversation that we're having now is how do workplaces navigate that? I had to go to my boss and ask if I can take that Wednesday morning off for Ash Wednesday. And I was wondering, how do companies actually navigate this? What's the best practice when it comes to religious holidays? There's so many in a year. South Africa is so diverse, including the different religions that are practiced by South Africans. So we are in conversation now with Justin Harting, who's a senior legal advisor at Strategy Labor Solutions. Justin, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Tshidi. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
There are a lot of religious holidays. As I said, South Africa's religion is almost as diverse as the country itself in terms of race, ethnicity, all of that. So what do companies actually need to think of? What do they need to bear in mind before planning putting together a plan on approaching the religious holidays that they will have to observe and allow their employees to observe throughout the year?
So I think where we need to start is note that there's nothing in our law that entitles an employee to take religious holidays. So that is where, having a comprehensive leave policy comes into place. Now, with the comprehensive policy, that will then obviously specify, how requests will be evaluated, what criteria will be considered, and also outline the process for requesting leave for religious holidays. So that's the first step that we need to have a look at when implementing the policies. But it's not just good enough to have that policy. So what needs to happen as well is the employer then needs to give employees an opportunity to raise concerns, to make suggestions about how we can approach the granting of, leave for religious holidays. ultimately, as we know, the employment relationship is based on mutual respect and trust. So if the employees know where the employer is coming from in terms of its operational requirements and its business requirements, and the employer knows, what the different religions are in its workplace and, how they can navigate those particular religious holidays, then everyone can plan, and then we'll know that the process is transparent, it's fair, and then everyone doesn't feel that they have been, taken advantage of or they've been discriminated against.
So I was actually speaking to people who complained about the religious holidays, because we have, I think, out of the public holidays that we have in a year, and there's quite a few, at least 2 are dedicated to Christian holidays. So Good Friday itself, as well as Christmas. People have raised those as an issue, saying, but these are Christian holidays. It's not recognizing everybody else's religion. How do you maintain fairness in that approach? You spoke about transparency now. How do you make sure that even your employees perceive the policy approach from a work perspective to be fair to everybody?
Yes. So now when we want to develop a leave policy that accommodates multiple religious holidays, what's important is for the employer to do its research. Now, when we talk about research, it's not just going onto Google and seeing, okay, what are the specific beliefs and tenets of this particular religion. What that means is you need to go to your staff members and first establish, okay, what different religions do I have in play at my workplace? Secondly, what are the requirements every year in terms of, holy days that need to be observed? Then once we've done that, then that allows us to be able to say, well, okay, we know that, say, the Christians are going to take, Easter and, Christmas Day unless they need to work. So what's going to happen is we will accommodate them. Then we know, okay, the people of the Muslim faith are going to need Eid and Ramadan, those types of times. And what you do is then you allow people to adjust their hours, because now you know what needs to happen in terms of those requirements. You allow them to maybe even swap out with their colleagues on different shifts and the like. And then ultimately you can even make other accommodations. So possibly allowing an employee to work remotely. Alternatively, you can put aside a private, quiet place for everyone to then do their religious observances. And you would even relax on those certain religious holidays, maybe even dress code to accommodate everyone. So it's really just a matter of finding out who do we have in our workplace, how often are they going to need time out, how would it affect us, and how can we accommodate everyone or find alternatives.
I was trying to remember how many public holidays South Africa has. It's 13. 13 in a year, and 2 of those were those that I was referring to. What are the common challenges, though, that companies face in trying to manage the diverse religious beliefs?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing here is, when you have multiple religions in the workplace, it could affect your ability to operate effectively. So you would need to try and coordinate all these various religious holidays with employees' work schedules. And, if we just allowing people to, take religious holidays as and when they come up and not make accommodations, then we could face things like staffing shortages, and, that then doesn't allow you to work. Also, there's certain industries like the healthcare industry which require employees to work shifts, 24/7. And, trying to accommodate everyone with their religion may even lead to disruptions of essential services. But I think the biggest challenge then obviously is then balancing the needs of the business with the needs of the employee. Because ultimately the employer will very quickly get accused of being biased or, discriminating if some employees' requests are granted whilst others are not. But, I think the main thing here is you can then obviously mitigate against that by implementing clear, consistent, inclusive policies that allow everyone to, observe their faith and make sure that it's transparently communicated to everyone. And then also, employers then can also implement a robust leave management system and then also address many of those challenges. So it's really just about making sure that you consider all your flexible options and you see how everyone can be accommodated. So it could be things like paid time off that could be used for religious holidays, or even unpaid leave for specific holidays if paid leave is limited. And ultimately, like I said, making sure everyone has a fair chance to then observe their faith.
All right. I'm going to take a quick break. But before I do that, if you've got questions for Justin, please feel free to call. And I also want to know, how does your workplace recognize religious holidays? If you are an employer that's listening, how do you respect the holidays from your different employees? How do you show that you are sensitive to the different beliefs and accommodating to what your employers require? 011-883 if you've got a comment or a question for our guests. 072-702-1702 if you want to send a voice note or put a question via WhatsApp.
John Perlman. Weekday afternoons.
3 to 6.
The reference then to dispute between City Power and the Salga Bargaining Council, is it your view that there is no such dispute, or are you saying there is a dispute but it's about something else?
I am not aware of Salga Bargaining Council bringing a dispute to us. I am aware, however, of one City Power employee who is in the supply chain space, having put a claim to say some people who he believes were wrongfully promoted.
John Perlman.
3 to 6 on 702.
Smarty from Momentum Alone.
Hi, it's Maggie. I have car and home insurance with Momentum Insure.
Uh-huh.
We want to use my husband's bakkie to go from Krugersdorp to London.
Well, if it's not London, Maggie, but East London, just activate the accident alert feature on the app, which automatically sends help in case of an accident.
Even if it's not my car?
Yes, safety for sure.
Oh, thanks, Steve. East or West, London's London.
SMS quote to 42024 to join now. Momentum Insure, keeping you safe on your journey to success. Momentum Insure is an authorized non-life insurer and FSP. Standard SMS rates and T's and C's apply. FSP 22789.
So we did a thing. A full commitment kind of thing. We've partnered with Sixt to bring Worldwide to your doorstep. So, you see how that's a serious thing? Because that's what you deserve. We know you're the GOAT. So, premium it is. Premium service, premium vehicles, premium you, premium us. Sani Sixt is all about adding extra to ordinary. Extra reach, extra countries, so you can be extra premium worldwide. Be the greatest of all time and rent Sani Sixt.
While we at Deco Furniture love traveling the world. Guten Tag. Bonjour.
Ni hao. Selamat siang.
To find you the best value furniture, there really is no place like home.
How's it? Marlo. Unjani?
To celebrate the best country in the world, Deco Furniture is offering up to 35% off locally made furniture. Plus, price drops on already amazing specials. In-store now or online at decofurnsa.co.za.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
18 minutes past 11. We are now having a debate in the studio about what holidays are prioritized the most by the workplace. And I was saying, well, Christianity gets those two public holidays that everybody, almost everyone, minus essential workers, really get a day off. We're in conversation with Justin Harting, who is a senior legal advisor at Strategy Labor Solutions. Justin, there is that issue around the essential workers that you mentioned. There is an issue of also navigating really small teams through religious holidays, the kind of planning that is required. I imagine it has to be meticulous to make sure that there are no disruptions. Imagine a small team and it is essential service, maybe.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, that's why it's so important to be proactive and flexible in your approach. And you need to understand what your employees' sincerely held beliefs are so that you can make those accommodations for them and be flexible. You know, you could even adjust things like break times, which would then allow staff to then meet their religious obligations without disrupting the operations of the business. So ultimately, it really is about, you know, just understanding the needs of the employees and then, you know, looking ahead, because, I mean, we know that there are going to be these religious holidays. We know well in advance. And then that allows everyone to be able to plan around it and make sure that everyone is accommodated without disrupting any sort of operations or any sort of essential services. It really does come down to that. It's really about understanding and then being proactive.
The role of HR in that and setting up the policies that are aligned with that, the value, the importance of that, as well as training. I think sometimes we have ideas put down in theory and then there's not sufficient training or education of how to go about implementing those particular policies and ideas so that they don't disrupt the workplace.
Correct. So, I mean, ultimately, once you've gone through your exercise of doing your research and your investigation into your workplace, then training and education become absolutely crucial in helping managers and HR, navigate all the multiple religious holidays, because they'll know what is needed, and then they'll be able to better manage and deal with the leave request in a fair manner. I mean, ultimately, the most effective training is that which focuses on cultural sensitivity, religious diversity, and also the legal aspects of religious accommodation, ultimately promoting, a more inclusive and respectful workplace. And, what you could even do is, use real-life case studies and role-playing exercises, and then that can help managers and HR apply their knowledge and skills in practical situations. So they could even use online learning platforms, which then allow them to, learn at their pace and then come back to it at a later stage when needed. So when, they get a specific leave request from a specific employee from a different religion, and they'll be able to say, okay, well, this is what's needed, and ultimately we can still accommodate this employee without disrupting our operations.
I want to play you a voice note quickly, Justin, where comment or question has come through the line. Please just take a listen.
Hi, Tshidi and Justin. I'm one of those people who simply don't understand why do people have to bring religion in the workplace. But the system where I'm working currently, I think it's simpler in that you are given a certain number of days in a work cycle or in a annum per annum. Then it's up to you how you take those days. If you, for whatever reason, and you manage your leave with your immediate supervisor accordingly. The reason why I'm saying that is that, especially in the black community, everybody just assumes that all of us are Christians. And you find that it's practiced in the workplace, in that people have to sing and pray in the morning, and that in some environments can end up impacting on other people's beliefs as well. So that's just a little issue I have with that. Right. Thank you. Great show.
Thank you so much, Mpo. He makes a very important point, Justin. I mean, what's that saying? Assumption makes out of you and me. He makes a very important point there, that the assumption shouldn't be that everybody subscribes to Christianity or otherwise. That to some degree, it's also your responsibility to observe your religious holidays.
Yes, ultimately, I mean, that's the long and short of it. We shouldn't assume, and that's why, doing those surveys and investigations into your workplace is so important. And then once you know who the different religions are, as I said, we can go into, it a little bit deeper, and we can see, well, this is what is required when observing, these religious holidays, and then accommodate accordingly. So if you don't want to have, everyone clapping and singing in the morning and disturbing others, as I said, we can then make a quiet place available for those particular staff members, and then it doesn't disrupt anyone else. And we can always just adjust and help everyone to ultimately, find an accommodation. So swap out with your colleagues if possible. Maybe you can adjust your working hours or even request to work remotely. Ultimately, everyone does have the right to religious beliefs and freedoms, and we need to accommodate accordingly.
You said earlier that the law doesn't necessarily cater for religious holidays. There's a question of African spirituality, which is often, I find, is still being debated over today, where somebody will say that they've got a calling, they've got to go away for a protected period of time. Navigating that, does that become, and I think the question of compensation, where is it unpaid leave? That also becomes part of the conversations that we ought to have in modern day workplaces, surely.
Yes, correct. And I mean, the Labour Court and the Labour Appeal Court have had occasion to deal with it in the past. And ultimately, where it is established that this is a legitimate calling in terms of African spirituality, people would be entitled to go without having to face the possibility of dismissal. But that also comes with the responsibilities as the employee. You would still need to communicate with your employer and make the necessary arrangements and come to some form of agreement. If you can't take, paid time off, then it would have to be unpaid. Because ultimately, it's like we started our conversation earlier. I mean, only public holidays are recognized as paid time off, and you need to implement proper policies. gone are the days now where we just say to people, well, look, it's not a recognized public holiday, so I'm not going to allow it. We still need to look into it and come up with those agreements. Sometimes what happens is staff members can take their paid time off and, in terms of normal annual leave, and then they can go off and observe their religious holidays. The other thing is it could be unpaid, and then, there's no sort of negative impact on the employer, but then the employee won't be, paid in terms of no work, no pay principle. And alternatives, other things that can be done is you can actually enter into work-back agreement with your employer or sign an acknowledgement of debt for that time that you've gone off, and you will get paid, but then you will have to pay that money back. So there are many different things that can be done to accommodate all these different beliefs that we have in our country.
I want to bring in Sia now. He's calling in from Paul's off. Sia, good morning to you.
Hi, Tshidi. How are you?
Very good. Justin is listening.
Good. Hi, Justin. Maybe slightly off topic, but I've always been curious. So let's say, for example, I'm a black South African, but my religion is Muslim, right? And I want to take time off for Eid. So obviously I would assume that people would automatically expect that if you're a Muslim, you're either of a certain skin tone or from a certain Muslim country. If I happen to be a black South African but practice the Muslim religion, number one, would I have to prove that I'm actually Muslim, like in case my employer doesn't believe me? And if so, how would I prove?
Look, ultimately, at the end of the day, we hope that people wouldn't go to that extent that now they make an assumption and then tell you, okay, well, now you need to prove you are of a certain religion. We'd like to think people have moved away from that, but, ultimately, if that is the case, you would then probably be able to, approach one of your religious leaders at mosque or, at wherever it might be that you meet, and then get them to write confirmation. But like I said, I really hope we aren't going to, require people to do that in the workplace in this day and age.
Justin, just before, I think this is my parting shot, really. I should have actually picked your brain on this earlier. Other disputes along these lines in South Africa that stand out? I mean, you made a case earlier around when I asked you about African spirituality, but other standout cases that are important to recognize that have happened here, that have maybe even been before the CCMA in this regard?
Yeah, so ultimately there have been disputes in the past where people have raised their, religious beliefs, and it's sort of got them into some form of difficulty, or they've suffered some form of detriment within their workplace. And, where you need to now try and make sure that people aren't discriminated against, and you need to have proof, you would get experts in that religion who would say, well, this is a sinful belief. And ultimately, like I said before, you cannot deny anyone their religious convictions or beliefs, and if you do, you expose yourself to the possibility of a discrimination claim in either the CCMA or even the Labour Court.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it at that. That's Justin Harting, who's a senior legal advisor at Strategy Labour Solutions. We're speaking there, of course, about navigating multiple religious holidays in the workplace. Very interesting. I didn't know that. First of all, I didn't know how many holidays we had in the year, but I also did not know that it actually was not the law for South Africa. That there's no law, rather. Let me phrase that properly. That there's no law in the country that specifically governs religious holidays, even though we recognize the many public holidays. And then, of course, the issue, of course, as I was pointing out, is that there's only 2 Christian holidays that are part of that line of public holidays. Remember, still to come, we're going to have the health and wellness feature, understanding the science behind how sugar impacts your child's brain. We always hear, do not give that child sugar. I see it a lot of parties where I've got, I think, one notorious cousin who likes to feed all the kids sugar to ramp them up. And all the parents worry because all the parents complain that in the evening they don't get any rest. So we'll try and understand what is the impact of excessive sugar intake on your children and the negative impact it has on their brain function, which potentially leads to many other issues, including memory and focus. So we'll speak about that after the headlines. I see now, though, Mbali Dlamini is back. Mbali's got your headlines.
Thank you so much, Tshidi. A very good morning. Tensions are continuing at the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape. Students are clashing with private security officials after a protest broke out this morning. It's understood the fresh protests erupted after 3 students were shot by a security guard who opened fire after the students allegedly torched a vehicle. Staying in the Eastern Cape, Cabinet is visiting the province for the next 2 days to take a closer look at issues affecting residents. President Cyril Ramaphosa will kick off his 2-day trip with a site visit to the port of Ngqura in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro this afternoon. And in the courts, the state has continued to push for the admissibility of confession statements by 2 of the accused in the Jocelyn Smith trial. The Western Cape High Court sitting in Saldanha Bay is holding a trial within a trial for consideration of those statements. Accused number 1, Shaquina Paulus, has been cross-examined about claims that he was tortured by police during interrogation last year. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at midday or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Heading into Deep Kloof, Soweto, there's slow-moving traffic. That's on Chris Hani Road between the N1 and Barra Hospital. Also heading into the Joburg CBD, there's slow-moving traffic coming towards, this is coming from the Germiston area on the M2 westbound between the Galdenays interchange and Joe Slovo Drive. Also leaving the Joburg CBD, expect some delays on Main Reef Road between Anderson and the M2. Also, if you are in the Edenville area traveling towards Bedford View, traffic a bit sluggish. R24 westbound between Edenville Road and the Gililees interchange. If you come across any other traffic issues, please SMS us on 31702. We are also on X at EWN Traffic.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Paying too much for car insurance? You could be, but you'll never know until you shop around. Switch to Outsurance and you could save big every month. Pinky, a 60-year-old woman, is a real Outsurance client who saves an unbelievable 870 Rand a month on a 2020 Kia Seltos 1.6. Now, that's a real deal. Why pay more? Switch and save today. SMS out to 45142. That's out to 45142. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's online.
Get tested this April at Specsavers and we'll give you a free optical frame up to the value of 1,000 Rand. That's right, get a free frame up to the value of 1,000 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye examination at Specsavers. Book online at specsavers.co.za or visit your nearest store nationwide. Early detection is key. Get tested today. Specsavers, for affordable eye care and a whole lot more. T's and C's apply.
Brush, stroke, paint, color, protect, and admire. From roof paint to exterior textures and interior silk, Warrior Paints has it all. The product range and stylish colors are amazing. And what's more, Warrior Paints has crushed prices for incredible savings. Enjoy that good old-fashioned personal service you deserve. For price, quality, variety, and service, Warrior Paints is street ahead. Warrior Paints, affordable, lasting, luxury.
Temperatures might start to drop everywhere else in the country, but in Durban, the fun is just heating up. Durban is ready to welcome you this Easter and throughout the winter season. Durban Tourism invites you to experience the endless fun season. Your all-access pass to the very best Durban has to offer, from family-friendly adventures and thrilling events to interactive city-wide activations. Experience world-class shopping malls, vibrant local markets, breathtaking waterfalls, cultural safaris, and unforgettable festivals. Go to visitdurban.travel or follow at DBNT Tourism. That's Durban Tourism on social media platforms to learn more. Visit Durban, the warmest place to be.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
I think this conversation that we're about to have is definitely for parents. Anywhere you go, and I've seen this, as I said, at parties a heck of a lot, where parents will caution against feeding their children sugar. They're like, hey, that person will be jumping up and down the wall. So if you've got questions about your child and their sugar intake, please feel free to call in for this one. I've got the perfect guest to try and answer all your questions and to give you guidance on this particular issue. You can call in on 011 883 0702 or on 072 702 1702. That's to send voice notes and WhatsApps. I'm joined on the line by Mbali Mapoli, who's a dietitian. We're speaking about the ways sugar impacts your child's brain. As I said, I often see at family parties and the likes, parents very, very worried because ultimately when it comes to sugar, having too much, right, of a good thing is not great. We hear that all the time. It's well documented for years on end that sugar has been linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. It's dangerous for children's health, but there's also an impact on a child's brain that I don't think many of us know about, how it impacts focus and the likes. I'm joined now, as I said, by Mbali Mapoli on the line. Mbali, good morning. Welcome to Radio 702.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
We often don't speak about the impact of sugar on the brain. We speak about the physical impact of too much sugar. Even the ads, when I look around, they speak about obesity and the likes and what can physically happen to your child. Not enough is spent on the cognitive development of children. Maybe speak to us about that aspect and even why it doesn't get spoken of at all, actually. Very little, rather.
I think it's maybe research, or it's an area of nutrition research that was not always trendy in a sense and not exciting. But as you were saying at the beginning, that more and more parents are becoming much more aware that there is a lot of added sugar in their foods that the children consume. And now they are questioning as to when we're speaking about a child being hyperactive or not concentrating, isn't that linked to the amount of added sugar that they consume? So there's that now, that curiosity, and we're starting to see those conversations happen, which is fantastic. Of course, the conversation of added sugar and the risk of obesity is still a very important one, especially in countries like ours where childhood obesity is skyrocketing and it's estimated to still continue to grow. And so we are at a perfect time to talk about the impact of added sugar, both for the mind and the growing mind of a child, their concentration at school, but also just obviously their obesity risk as well.
Talk us through the impact of added sugar on a child's mind.
So basically, when we speak about sugar in child's brain, when a child eats high amount of added sugar, their brain experiences a surge of dopamine, and that we call a feel-good hormone, or like a feel-good chemical. And this makes, foods that are delicious and treaty and high in added sugar very rewarding for children, because they give like this mini high, and over time that regular intake can sort of condition a child's brain to want more added sugar because of that pleasure, and creating this habit loop. So especially because children have developing brains, and those developing brains of children are more impressionable, meaning that a child will identify that when I eat that cupcake or when I eat an ice cream, there's this certain feel-good feeling that I have, and they want to preserve that. So that's where the biggest concern is. But also excessive sort of intake of added sugar may lead to blood sugar spikes, and where you'll have high highs of blood sugars in a child's body overall, and then have low lows, and that can cause an impact, in the child's focus, attention span, also just cognitive function in terms of just how they are concentrating and memory, which can be, you find that a child is very energetic in one moment and then very sluggish and irritable the next. And that's what they say, a child is on a sugar high. So it alters that focus and just also irritability. Once the sugar levels are starting to drop, that's where a child becomes much more irritable and their mood changes. And so those are the biggest sort of impacts that high intakes of added sugar have on a child's brain.
Let's continue down that pathway about the child's brain, the learning ability, the memory and concentration. Just elaborate a little bit more on that impact. What do parents need to look out for to see that there is a problem here with how their children are functioning in terms of concentration and the likes, and that they could possibly look to whether or not there's a high intake of sugar? Because I think one of the problems, Mbadi, and I'm willing to be corrected, is that the issue with sugar is that it's hidden sugars. Sometimes the prepackaged foods, even if it's vegetables, are coated in sugar.
Well, there is hidden or added sugar in the foods, and oftentimes it's foods that are not fresh produce. So we're speaking about foods that they should be clearly labeled at the back that on the total amount of sugar that is in this product, how much of it is added sugar. And that's where this hidden sugar concept comes from. But if we are focusing on fresh produce and we are focusing on foods like fruits and vegetables and foods that are giving more nutrients and nourishment, typically those foods do not have added sugar, unless of course it's your dried versions of those foods, because they do add sugar to preserve, whether it's dried fruits where you find that there is added sugar on coating to help preserve the fruit. But just normal fresh produce of fruits and vegetables, they don't typically, we don't see added sugar in them. But as you were talking about the link of added sugar and concentration, I think there is a clear link between added sugar and hyperactivity or like attention issues. While, of course, sugar is not the sole cause of hyperactivity, but there is a bunch of studies, in fact, a lot of studies that have linked that children who consume high added sugar, they've got increased risk of attention deficit behaviors. And obviously there's more research that is being done in that area, but we are seeing, as I said at the beginning, more impulsivity, more irritability, and of course poor attention. Where a child, if they've consumed a cereal that is high in added sugar in the morning, so for their first period in school, they will be focusing for that, 30 minutes or 45 minutes of their day at school. But after that, as the blood sugar levels start crashing, you find that a child is not concentrating and they becoming more irritable and they're getting distracted. And obviously that takes away their learning time, because if we had started that day, even if we are giving them a high added sugar cereal, then we pay it with the yogurt or pay it with the fruit to just make sure that there is some nutrients and some good natural sugar in that breakfast, then we get to slow down those blood sugar crashes, meaning that a child will concentrate for a little bit more longer than just 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Sticking with that theme again, the issue of the labeling, what should parents be looking out for? You spoke about the difference being, I think, on fresh fruits, fresh fruit produce. That's not where you're going to find it, but they will look to cereal, as you've spoken about now. What do they need to look out for in labeling to see where the trappings are and to try and figure out what is ideal and what should be the correct measure of sugar intake for children?
Oh, yes. So on the food labeling at the back on the nutritional panel, there is carbohydrates, and on carbohydrates it will say total sugars, and under total sugars it will clearly state which one is added sugar. In fact, manufacturers should be stating exactly which one is added sugar and which sugar came from things like lactose, which is a natural milk sugar. Then the parents should be looking on that added sugar. We are looking that, like a rule of thumb is sugar should be like 5 grams or less per 100 grams. So when you are looking on the added sugar, 5 grams of sugar is about a teaspoon. Then you are looking for something that is less than 5 grams. We normally say up to 15 grams is acceptable, so long as you stick to the serving size. But anything that has added sugar above 15 grams per 100 gram, that food item is definitely high sugar. Then the next layer is to look into the dietary fiber, because fiber helps us with the absorption of sugar. So sometimes you find that a food item will range about 15 to 20 grams of added sugar per 100 gram, but when you look into the added fiber or like the dietary fiber, it says it's about 6 grams of fiber per 100 gram. So there you can get away with it a little because it's a food item that has added sugar, yes, but it's got quite good amount of dietary fiber. So those are the two things when it comes to sugar that parents should always look out for. Anything that has about 15 grams of added sugar and doesn't have as high as 6 grams of fiber, that food item is definitely going to cause these high sugar crashes, like high sugar highs, and then crashes that I was talking about. So that's pretty much a rule of thumb. Then you can go to the ingredients list. We're looking for things like sucrose, glucose, corn syrup, maltose. Those are sort of added sugar, or cane sugar, sometimes called cane sugar. But some things like fructose, you need to investigate that, because a food item on ingredients list can be listed that it has fructose, and you find that it's because they added fresh fruit on that product. So investigate to find out now the source of that fructose, if it is added fructose in a sense of syrup, or is it added fruit in a product, because that does make a little bit of a difference in terms of the actual added sugar, because if they've added a fruit, it won't appear there on the added sugar labeling, because that is more considered as a natural sugar.
There are a couple of voice notes that have come our way in Bali where a couple of parents have a few questions for us. 011-883-0702 if you've got questions for our guest, or you can send a voice note or a WhatsApp on 072-702-1702. Here are a couple of the WhatsApps that have come through, voice notes rather, that have come through.
Hi, Tshidi. This is such a great topic. I'm a mom of a nearly 2-year-old struggling to balance the sugar diet. I'm very conscious of it, but I'm struggling to find alternatives. She doesn't have a particularly sweet tooth, but sometimes she won't eat. I'll get her a full fat or a double cream yogurt, but she'd want to have something sweet. So what would Bali suggest as safe sweeteners or just enhancers? It doesn't have to be like a terribly sweet alternative, but I do try and add berries, but I just feel like she won't eat it unless it's a little bit sweeter, and when it's too sweet she won't eat it at all. So let me know what you think. What do you think will be best for my little toddler? Thanks again, great topic. Kathy in 4 ways.
All right, Kathy, thank you so much for that. Mbali, what does Kathy need to do? She says she's tried berries.
Yes, I love that, Kathy. Especially frozen berries. For some reason, once they are frozen, if you're gonna blend them straight from being frozen, don't defrost them. They tend to be quite concentrated in their natural sugar. So yes, definitely frozen fruit, berries, mangoes, they work well. Strawberries, you can even blend. I have got this amazing treat that I do with my children where I take berries and add a little bit of our homemade rooibos tea, like I use the lager tea for kids, blend that up and make like some slushies or even like ice lollies with that. They love it. In summer, it's a hit. Or even things like, again, making your homemade iced teas and putting fruits in it or putting herbs in it and freezing it. Or you are making... instead of adding, you don't have to add sweeteners like artificial sweeteners. We could add normal sugar, but if you are making treats from home, you can control the amount of added sugar or honey, a little bit of honey. If your daughter likes yogurt, adding fruits in the yogurt and a little bit of honey to blend it up, but obviously not too much. As you said, she doesn't like it when it's too sweet. Those are the things that we can do. I love making homemade popcorn, and sometimes you just make a little bit of a sugar caramel syrup thing and add, like when you mix sugar, a little bit of water and add some chocolate in that and coat your popcorn in that. Kids love that because it's giving this thing that I'm eating a sweet treat, but it's actually high fiber popcorn. So those are the things that you definitely can try. You can also come to my page. I often share some delicious sweet treats that parents can try, that I try with my children, where I feel like I fool them into thinking something is quite high in added sugar while it's actually not. So yes, she is on the right track, but I think just don't be too cut yourself some slack. You're doing well. Just add a little bit of variety and try different things. Children are also keen on being involved. Involve your 2-year-old when you're blending stuff. When they've been involved in doing or creating a recipe, they will probably enjoy it more.
What is your page in Bali? I'll also give a shout out to it at the end of the conversation.
It's Urban Dietitian on Instagram. And on my link in bio, then they can go. There's a bunch of recipes that we've been creating over the years as well. That's been creating over the years.
You know, one of the issues in South Africa, when you look at education specifically and learning, we don't score well against our counterparts around the world. And part of that, for me, is a question about whether or not it is the food that our children are eating when they are in early childhood development and the likes, right? So there's a question about what can poorer families afford to put on the table. There are families who really rely on processed foods to get by because that's what they can afford. What is your advice to families that are dealing with that also want to be able to make sure that as they nurture their little ones, they give them the best possible advantage as far as their cognitive development is concerned?
Oh, yes, you're right. Many South African families are facing food insecurity and limited access, I guess, to fresh food options. There is, but it's often not easily accessible, or if it is easily accessible, it's not packaged fancy and colorful for children to really want to open that food item. It is not about blaming anyone, but I think you're right. We need to make sure that our own South African or traditional South African snacks are packaged well, and children will see that and actually want to eat it. Things like mealies, like roasted mealies that you find on the side of the road, it's an amazing snack. It compares with popcorn. But children will always pick a bag of popcorn because it's packaged well. They wouldn't really believe that mealies is exactly the same as popcorn. So things like mealies or ground nuts, as well, or even if obviously it's fresh fruit, as we know, fresh fruit. But those are the food items that children should be sort of continue to be introduced to. Amasi are very much similar in comparison to plain yogurt. So I remember growing up, my mom used to mix amasi with, I'm not going to mention brands, but with a brand that was like powder, like it would be sweet, and it would turn amasi pink. That we loved. So amasi can then still be used like that, where we add something to give them a little bit of color, and children will like to, or like will get
so
sort of attracted to that. Fool them a little bit.
That
and
pink
also,
thing
I think
is discontinued, hopefully, luckily, I think. But I know what you're referring
to.
Yes.
But we used to use that. My mom will add a little bit just for color. You can actually use food coloring even, that you can, obviously kids can consume. A little bit of food coloring, and then the children will know, you've turned amasi pink, they want to taste that, or blue, or whatever the color is. So it's about taking what we have, not also us as adults. I think we are partially to blame because of just maybe diet culture. We speak ill of the foods that we grew up eating. We'll be saying, I don't like that, it reminds me of poverty, in front of children.
And children
cabbage,
and we do
exactly.
Yeah.
And then children will have that mentality that when they see that food item, automatically they don't want to try it because mom said it's this or mom said it's that. But if we allow children to explore for themselves, we might be shocked. They might like, pilchards fish cakes that you make or something like that. So it goes beyond obviously added sugar, but I'm just now expanding to other foods. Amagwinya, they might like eating igwinya with means. We don't speak ill of it and say, it's fattening, but just understand that if consumed right, it can be part of a child's diet.
There's a question for you here in the WhatsApp line. A parent says, Mbali, my 3-year-old has recently been throwing up since 3 weeks ago. We suspected that it's sugar as he consumes a lot, but since these incidents, we've totally removed sugar from his diet except for yogurt. Is this the right way to react to the situation? And I wonder if you can speak about reversing the high sugar intake. If parents are worried about their children's development, the threat of physical diseases, the threat of their mental development, how do they walk back from the high sugar intake?
The biggest thing here is if a child for an extended period of time consumes foods that are high in added sugar, they often then are lacking nutrients, those foods. Not all the time, unless they are fortified with added vitamins and minerals, but oftentimes they will lack those nutrients, which means it's going to affect the nutrient intake of that child, which means we possibly have nutrient deficiencies. So if there is that suspicion from parents or caregivers that this child eats a lot of sugar, hence maybe it's affecting their development, their mental function, definitely consult with a dietitian. Let a dietitian sit down with you and look into the diet and say, is it really a thing, or even a family physician? Because children under the age of 5, they are most high at risk of malnutrition. And this doesn't necessarily happen because lack of food, but in recent years we are seeing it happening in urbanized areas where there is just poor diets overall, diets that are lacking in nutrients. So in this case, a child vomiting and there's suspicion that they are not eating well, I'll definitely say consult with a healthcare professional. Let them assess the current diet and the child's growth. Look into their age their weight for age, their height for age, to see if there's no stunting. Are they meeting all their growth developments, to then rule out if there's any nutrient deficiencies. I think that's the biggest thing. But if it's still not to that extent, I think just applying these recipes that we are talking about earlier, trying new things at home, involving children, being more involved. And again, screen time is contributing a lot. So managing screen time, because that's where we see commercials and advertisements popping up, making sure that your child is signing into premium YouTube so that you avoid or limit these ads that keep on popping up on those platforms. That will also just help get us somewhere in reducing your child's added sugar intake overall.
All right, that's interesting. Mbali, one more voice note for you.
CD, my question is honey as dangerous as sugar in children? Or even I can extend it even to adults for weight gain or what? Thanks, CD Tandy here. Right.
Thank you so much. Your comments to Tandy. And if possible, because I am running out of time, if maybe you can also just speak about the role of community and schools in trying to help move children further and further away from sugar, high sugar.
Okay, so to answer my question regarding honey, this is a very good question. For children under the age of 1, definitely no honey because it is literally dangerous. Beyond the weight gain, it has what you call botulus spores, which can be harmful for children under the age of 1. In terms of children older than 1, honey and normal brown sugar or white sugar are exactly the same. So there it's about adding it in small quantities. That's the biggest thing. You just add a little bit just for taste and not to overdo it, then it is fine because you're just adding it. But it's not different to say honey is better than your cane sugar. It's just at the end of the day about the quantity. And then back to the communities and schools, that's where children spend the most of their time. And I think there is a lot of education by the Department of Basic Education around nutrition and nutrients, teaching children that. So I think that should continue. But also what is being sold at school should be investigated, that there is option for healthier options as well. Like there are fruits, children are allowed to like there is fruits or fresh produce that is being sold. There are nuts that are being sold so that there are different options. But also children, I wish we get to a point where they will be allowed to just go somewhere in the kitchen, make themselves some tea, add a little bit of sugar and without feeling that they need to take high added sugary drinks. It's a team effort or like it's a multi-sectoral effort. And as dietitians, we're trying our best to educate, but also the schools, what children are exposed to. And then coming back to home, what parents or caregivers pack in the children's lunchbox. I know certain schools have got strict rules that no treats or during the week, maybe one treat in a week type of a situation, and that children should not fight that. Work with the school. Ask your children at home, like, what are the healthy options that you want me to pack for you? And let's go to the shops. Point to me, what fruits do you want? That's going to help that the lunchboxes going to school are focusing on nourishment. And then once in a while, we'll have treats. Because I think children or like parents or caregivers should understand there's a huge difference between a snack and a treat. A snack is a small meal that is nutritious that the children can eat in between big meals. A treat is a fun food that children should eat now and then. Like it shouldn't replace a meal. If we understand that difference, when a child is hungry, we'll give them a snack, but just for fun, because children are children, we'll then give them a treat in a small quantity.
All right, thank you so much. How insightful. Mbali Mapoli, you can find her on @urban-dietitian on social media on Instagram. Thank you so much again for your time, Mbali.
Some people go all out for date night. We just go out to the driveway.
Exquisitely sculpted lines.
And an interior that could pass for a luxury penthouse.
Why go out when the classiest venue is already parked outside?
The new Haval Jolion Pro from $4,399 per month. Its effortless style steals every scene. Visit gwm.coza for T's and C's and to book a test drive. Go with more. Go with the new GWM Haval Jolion Pro.
Does your insurer foot the bill when unscrupulous guests sneak away without paying? Are you reimbursed when air travel delays leave your coffers bare? Do they simply shrug when a resident of your fine establishment is too frisky with the faucet, sending tidal waves down the staircase? Or are you with Auto & General? Owners of guest houses, lodges and boutique hotels trust Auto & General with their hospitality insurance. For a quote, visit autogen.co.za or SMS business to 49025. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Specsavers cares about your vision. Glaucoma is known as the silent thief of sight, as most cases don't have any symptoms. Get tested today. Specsavers.
Coming up next is the Midday Report, usually with Mandy Wiener, not today. Today it's a Midday Report with Jane Dutton. Jane, good afternoon. What's coming up next?
Good afternoon. You might have heard that there are violent protests underway at the Walter Sisulu University in Umtata. I mean, many of the students are covered up and we're hearing reports of violence. and a possible death, but we need to confirm that. Our reporter is there, so we'll get an update on that. The president is heading off to the Eastern Cape. He's looking at an important port before he meets the leadership there. We're going to be talking about the Chief Luthuli inquest, the second day into that, and talking a little bit more about his pedigree. And then we're going to end off by celebrating art in this wonderful world of ours.
We love art. Thank you so much. That's Jane Dutton with you between 12 and 1 o'clock on my end. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a lovely afternoon. Here's your EWN news update.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon. I'm Mbali Dlamini. Tensions are continuing at the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape this afternoon. Students have been clashing with private security officials after protests broke out this morning. It's understood the fresh protest action erupted after 3 students were shot by a security guard who opened fire after students allegedly torched a vehicle. The institution in Mthatha has halted all operations for the day. We stay in the Eastern Cape. Cabinet is visiting the province for the next 2 days to take a closer look at issues affecting residents. President Cyril Ramaphosa will kick off his 2-day trip with a site visit to the port of Ngqura in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro this afternoon. This visit is